Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 200, Drawing Parallels. This was Aaron's first time witnessing someone move in the stagnated world as freely as him. But he wasn't surprised. He knew the guy was loaded. And the money would always find a way to drag the impossible into the realm of possibility. Aaron shot forth with guitars drawn. Ivor marched forward with his daggers clenched in his hand. And their first ever strike against each other took place. As a result of the weapons clashing with each other, a series of clanking sounds could be heard in the surroundings. The audience could see a series of afterimages of both the lightning element rankers battling toe-to-toe against each other. Ivor parried Aaron's jabs almost every time. Likewise, the former dealt with every slash of the latter effectively. It looked like a stalemate to the audience, but both the fighters themselves knew Aaron had a slight upper hand. Aaron had a heightened, more refined perception of everything that was happening around him. This was because, unlike Ivor, who had given the responsibility of his enhanced perception of the artifact he was wearing, all of Aaron's senses were well invested in augmenting his real-time reasoning as a whole. This allowed Aaron to make his attack slip through Ivor's defenses sometimes. They were rare moments. And the cuts and puncture wounds he had inflicted on Ozan Jr. were not that serious. But those wounds painted a grim picture for Ivor. But the sufferer didn't care. This was the first time he was pushed this hard against a ranker of his age. He felt unmatched exhilaration from battling with Aaron. The high-speed battle continued for a while before Aaron and Ivor both retired aside opposite from each other to catch their breaths. They felt that they were at it for quite a long time now. And their bodies felt tired, which was highlighting that belief. However, they both knew it was the distorted perception of time. Ivor laughed heartily before commenting on the duel that took place just now. I got to be honest with you, Aaron. I didn't think you would have it in you to battle with me like this the first time I met you. You finally turned into a fine specimen for me to have a duel against. Why don't you disband your party and come to join us? Jason is looking for some trusted students he could count on. Maybe I can help you secure the place. Ivor spoke as if they were officially taking a break from their match. Renita and Jason were still fighting with each other in the backdrop. But that didn't invoke a sense of urgency in Ozan Jr.'s mind. He knew Jason was going to win. If he didn't, Ivor was confident he could deal with both Aaron and Renita. Unlike Aaron, he hadn't expended his mana that much. That allowed him to take things leisurely. Or at least that's what he believed in. Aaron and Ivor were slightly gasping for breaths. They both were perspiring and bleeding due to injuries inflicted on them by their opponents. Ivor looked more haggard than Aaron. His clothes were torn at various places. Because of Aaron's precise attacks at similar locations, Ivor had appeared to have suffered fewer injuries than Aaron. But they both knew Ivor's condition was much more severe. The referee raised his eyebrows when he saw that two students had stopped their duels. But he didn't interfere. A sufficient amount of time had passed by now. The students' active participation was confirmed. Now they could choose to retire individually or call it quits as a team, and the referee would allow them. But it didn't look like the duel between Aaron and Ivor was able to get wrapped up after the referee listened to Aaron's reply that cut short Ivor's speech. Listen here, man. We don't necessarily have to talk while catching our breaths. Why don't we both just shut our mouths and settle for another round when we are both ready? The conventional battle scenario dictated that Aaron would either reply positively or diss him. But Aaron had chosen neither and just told him to shut up in a roundabout way. After Aaron spoke, Ivor raised his hand and pointed at him. But he found no words to counter Aaron's demands. In the end, he kept his mouth shut and chose to follow his opponent's decision. Aaron knew what Ivor meant when he said Jason was looking for supporters to form a team. In reality, he knew it was much more than just forming teams to participate in the ranking wars. That's why Aaron was staying away from Jason, lest the guy makes him an offer he can't refuse. Aaron was no stranger to ignoring his problems while wishing that they would go away on their own. He had practically lived one life on that principle. Using this to deal with Jason was something that came naturally to him. That's why Aaron didn't want to have any word with Ivor. No matter what they spoke, the subject would always come back to Jason recruiting members for his team. The butcher nipped this problem in the bud by making Ivor shut up with his rude yet effective statement. The battle resumed. Aaron chipped away at Ivor's defenses and the latter did the same to him. Since both of their weapons were being used against each other, it was only natural for both of their clothes to become bloodied. Yet, Ivor wasn't backing down. He laughed like he was feeling the greatest joy of his life while he was getting cut by Aaron. That had already spooked a few of his fans in the audience while the others were turning into his zealots. The audience was in awe at the level on which Aaron and Ivor were fighting against each other. Aaron still acted normal and uncaring. That made Ivor's maniacal laughter even more eye-catching to the audience. They also started feeling pity for Aaron, thinking that the guy was fighting with a maniac. Good, Aaron. I now know you don't like to talk much. So allow me to show you with my actions that I can still outclass you with one card I haven't shown in the ranking wars yet. Ha ha ha. Bow down to me. Beast Contract Spell. Chapter 201, Aleph. Beast Contract Spell. Ivor said out aloud before a strong pulse of mana was generated all around him. Aaron halted in his steps and chose to watch the show, lest his movements get affected by the series of F-rank mana pulses setting off around his opponent. Ivor's skin started forming scales. The now hardened scale patterns had a slight purple tinge over them. Ivor was now looking more like a snake man with his vertical pupils and convoluted mana signature. That's right. Ivor had formed a beast contract with the purple lightning snake. It seemed like a huge coincidence, but Aaron knew it was not. Because every close combat expert in a lightning element would have made the same choice for their beast contracts if they were in the same location and position as the students of LA. Forming a beast contract with purple lightning snake just made sense for the guys like Aaron and Ivor who had almost similar specializations and requirements. Therefore, Aaron was a little surprised by the fact that Ivor had a beast contract spell that he hadn't used before. But he wasn't surprised by his choice to form a contract with. Aaron's eyes shined with cunning. Ivor was a suitable test subject to know about how much power and manifestation he should show when he makes use of Reen. In addition, he executes a faux beast contract spell. Ozan Jr. had become a parameter on which he was intending to base his dummy spell's effects. Reen, pay close attention to this guy. You have to manifest features on me that are the same as him when he uses his beast contract spell. Alright. Aaron informed Reen, who confirmed Aaron's order. It was going to be Reen who would take care of the dummy transformation for him after all. He needed her to stay in the loop. Unaware of what Aaron was thinking, Ivor, who was totally in the zone, completed his spell-induced transformation and charged at his opponent. This time he was much faster and looked stronger than before. The sudden spell-induced transformation stopped Ivor's bleeding. His wounds showed signs of healing. The invisible mana layer over his skin got thickened and became semi-transparent. It radiated a faint white light that seemed to bounce off of his skin. Ivor had initiated his attack as soon as his transformation was stabilized, yet he still couldn't catch Aaron off guard like he thought he would. He had thought that this would be Aaron's first experience seeing a transcendent grade spell being cast. After all, the spell cost crazy money. He didn't think a guy like Aaron would have that kind of stash on him even with his C-rank healer for a guardian. Aaron had kept a low profile despite being one of the top performing students in the academy. He sort of just blended right in among the students. So nobody was aware of all his trump cards. Because nobody had kept track of him or his activities. Unlike Ken, Jason, and Ivor, there were no fans of Aaron in the audience. Well, there was one, Rami Richards. But he didn't count because he belonged to his team. Therefore, nobody was aware Aaron would have the beast contract spell too. Because nobody expected him to. This was what solidified Ivor's belief that he was stronger than Aaron. Because he had his beast contract spell to rely on in case things started heading south for him. Arg. This was Aaron's turn to grunt with pain as he was kicked in the chest by Ivor savagely. Using the beast transformation spell would highlight the stats and characteristics of the beast related to the contract. So forming a forced contract with the purple lightning spell had given Aaron's assaulter elevated levels of agility, even when the effects were deemed temporary. This effect along with his overall increased body stats made it easy for Ivor to breach Aaron's defenses while staying nimble on his feet to avoid counterattack. It was now Aaron's turn to get thrashed around. And that's what Ivor did with his opponent. Those who inflict pain must have the courage to bear it as well. Aaron thought while he was being beaten black and blue by a close combat expert like him. He didn't flinch from the pain despite all those injuries. Although his mind was occupied with observing his opponent, he felt disconnected from everything else. Ernie, I think I got it? No need to get beaten up anymore. Use the faux beast contact spell. I'll raise your body stats to a sufficient degree so that you can beat this bitch up. Reen was worried about her master's safety, so she made that announcement. But Aaron knew she only wanted him to stop getting beaten up out of concern. She was also picking on his cuss words vocabulary, it seemed. But Aaron didn't budge from his position. Ivor needed to show him all that he could do before Aaron decided to change the game. But simply getting beaten up wasn't enough to make Ivor reveal all his potential. And Aaron didn't have anything else that could work on the guy apart from the faux beast contract spell. Except. Gem, are you awake? The question was asked in Aaron's mind to no one in particular. He was hoping the gem would answer his call. Otherwise, he'd have to resort to using the faux beast contract spell to make a comeback. Aaron and Ivor both had retracted their weapons this time. They were both bleeding and had multiple cuts all over their bodies. By deploying a mana layer on the wounds, they were suppressing bleeding. Aaron was even more prone to severe blood loss than Ivor. This is because the latter had used the beast contract spell and turned his skin into the scale to mitigate the effects of the cuts. That's why it was mutually decided by them to not use weapons anymore. As a result, both of them agreed to continue their weaponless duel. By contrast, if any of them crossed a certain threshold of danger, the referee would force them to forfeit. Aaron waited for the gem to answer while he entered the defensive stance. He abandoned the attack and focused only on the counter. Only this way could he deal with Ivor. By minimizing his damage. I always knew I couldn't count on you. Reen, let's do this, said Aaron to himself and was about to execute his foe beast contract spell with Reen when he suddenly heard a voice in his head. Aaron, don't be hasty. You can count on me. I was only reluctant because I would be put back to sleep if I helped you again. And, you can call me Alefe. Chapter 202, Beast Manifestation. Alefe spoke up. The gem's voice turned feminine as soon as it decided to come out with its identity. Alefe. All right. So tell me, Alefe, can you help me? I don't care if you are put to sleep if you can help me. It's not like you can be of much use to me when you are awake. Aaron gave Alefe a clear-cut answer that would sound rude, but Alefe knew he was speaking the truth. She sighed to herself before replying. All right. I can help you with casting the combo of sedated perception and stunning speed. I can augment the effect of the combo spell, but it would be limited by what your body and mind can handle at the current level. That is enough. I'll take care of the rest, Aaron said to Alefe as he wiped the blood clean from the corner of his mouth with his palms. It was time for Aaron to return the favor to Ivor for all the service he had done to him. Sedated perception plus stunning speed. The same spell combo had been activated for Aaron. But unlike before, this time it was handled by Alefe. That meant Aaron could now cast up to 3 spells simultaneously without facing any repercussions. Aaron didn't tarry a moment longer and executed dual stacked blitz steps. He felt as though he was moving faster than ever, even in a stagnated world. Ivor had enjoyed beating a strong opponent like Aaron. But he thought it was about the time he wrapped it up and helped Jason, lest he gets angry at him. But just when he decided to deal a final blow, he found out that he was underestimating his opponent all along. Aaron appeared right in front of the enemy close combat expert and decided to beat him up in his game. He first tried planting a punch under the guy's chin. And almost succeeded. Aaron's punch was blocked by Ivor's palm subconsciously. It was his experience as a close combat expert that served him well. Alas, experience alone couldn't help him bridge the distance between him and his opponent. This was because Alefe was on a different perception realm altogether, thanks to Alefe's elevation of combo spell effects. Aaron's punch was blocked by Ivor's palm, so he used the elbow of the same hand to make a solid contact just below the guy's sternum. This counter couldn't be blocked by Ivor, who was trying to deal with Aaron's insane speed and reflexes with his sheer experience in close combat alone. Before Ivor's body could react to the landed blow, Aaron pulled the hand that had grabbed his first punch with his other hand. He yanked it hard enough, dislocating it from Ivor's shoulders. Arg. Blitz storm. Ivor cried in pain. He then executed the lightning element AoE so Aaron would be forced to retreat no matter what he did. 2 lightning element attacks from 2 rankers won't ever be the same just because they had the same elemental affinity. Every spell would carry its caster's mark. That was because every ranker had a different mana signature. The elemental attacks that used rankers' mana carrying their mana signatures would bear the ranker's mark. So when the attacks would land on the opponent, the mark the spells carried would not match the one the recipient had. That conflict in mana signature would result in the elemental spells delivering their intended effect on their opponents even when they shared the same elemental affinity as the caster. This was the reason Aaron had decided to retreat even with his lightning element affinity. But thanks to his elevated perception, he was long outside the AoE's range just before it was finished getting cast. Aaron had also tried to interrupt Ivor's spell execution with his barrage of attacks from all directions. But Ivor had gritted his teeth and didn't stop his execution until it was done. The butcher had to admit Ivor's drive to be the most successful in his generation wasn't to be scoffed at. The guy had talent, background, and determination to be the finest version of himself. Ivor maintained his AoE spell and made a determined expression before saying out aloud. It seems I underestimated you, Aaron Idril. Who would have thought the city of Ozan would have not one but 2 talented individuals? But I learned from my mistakes, you know. You want me to reveal all my cards, it seems. So be it. Beast Manifestation. The tattoo on Ivor's back of the palm shined with bright luminance before a huge semi-transparent cloud of mana was condensed in front of him. Ivor touched the cloud of mana with his tattooed palm. As soon he did that, the tattoo lines on his skin got dimmed and the cloud of mana started restructuring itself. All this was happening when Ivor was standing in the middle of the blitz storm he was maintaining. Since the contracted beast's mana body was formed under the influence of his spell, its body wouldn't create a conflict with Ivor's spells. This is because it had the same mana signature. That made the about to manifest beast immune to Ivor's attacks and vice versa. This was the reason Ivor could cast the beast manifestation while remaining inside the protection of his AoE spell. It didn't take long for the beast's mana body to get constructed. It was akin to the natural body of the purple lightning snake. Only that it was semi-transparent and looked a tiny bit taller than usual. The crowd was awed by Ivor's transcendent spell execution. It was the first time to hear about such a spell, much less see it being executed. Therefore, Ivor created new fans of his with that intimidating spell. The newly manifested snake spiraled his body around his master's in such a way that its body would be Ivor's first line of defense from all angles. Only then did Ivor dispel his AoE to conserve his remaining mana. Aaron looked at Ivor and the snake, who returned his cold gaze with hostile intention. Things were going to get messy again for Aaron. Chapter 203, Foe Beast Contract Spell. Aaron looked at Ivor and the snake, who returned his cold gaze with hostile intention. Things were going to get messy again for Aaron. But Aaron wanted this. This was his prime chance to closely observe the effects of a genuine beast contract spell. He had told Reen to pay attention to his opponent's every move and any minor details he leaked in front of them. Reen obliged. Her C-rank mana sense could be made discreet to lower-ranked entities if she wanted to be. She just needed to be wary of entities who were of the same ranker as her or higher. Since no one of that rank was in the vicinity, she spread her mana sense across the entire battlefield, sharing its feedback with her owner. Aaron observed that Renita was huffing. She had tried her finest and had performed beyond what she could normally do in keeping Jason out of Aaron's way. But it was only a matter of time before she got either neutralized by her opponent or turned unconscious after overdrawing on mana. Steve had joined Renita and was also trying his best to give Renita a breather every once in a while. She had already cast her AoE spell twice. She used her long-range mana bullets to keep the prodigy away from her and her teammate, if only barely. Steve wasn't all that effective in dealing with Jason. He was helping Renita, yes. But he knew he would have been taken out by their opponent long ago had it not been Renita helping him with her cover fire. But the duo was running on fumes while their opponent adopted mana conservation strategy. All Jason needed to do in dealing with those opponents was dodge and wait for them to run out of their mana. It was not like Jason didn't try to leave the battle with Renita. The girl was very persistent with her attacks and, thanks to her wind affinity, managed to keep up with his speed. Jason wasn't helpless against her. But he knew that a battle with her was going to waste his time. So Jason tried to storm out of his duel with the ranger. But Renita wouldn't let him go. She had been instructed by Aaron to keep the guy out. And she had decided to try her best to fulfill the expectation her crush had on her. So the Batlemage was helpless. He could neither advance nor retreat. Aaron had made Alfa deactivate the spell combo after Ivor had executed his AoE. But he knew it was soon going to have to be activated again. That's because the Ranker Beast duo was just about to attack him. The purple snake attacked first. It slithered its way towards Aaron in such a way that one could believe that it had flown towards its target. Aaron made Alfa activate his time element spell combo just when the snake was about to bite him with its long and sharp fangs. The shape of the snake's fanger was as real could get. It was just that Aaron could partially see through them. Observing the beast closely in the stagnated world, he and Reen observed its mana body and the way it responded. "What do you think, Reen?" Aaron asked while changing positions so the snake would miss its target. Reen observed some more for a while before saying, "We can give you an appearance that would state that you are using the beast contract spell. But we cannot do anything about the beast manifestation. Mana bodies are one thing. I'm sure we can find a way to manifest it the way we see in front of us if we look hard enough. But we can't do anything with the soul that resides in the tattoo. I kinda have an idea about how we can deal with the soul part. But I'll tell you that after the battle gets over. Let's concentrate on the battle for now." Reen commented and Aaron focused on what was in front of him. The latter nodded at her opinion and got out of the snake's attack zone. Aaron knew fighting the beast was useless. It had a mana body that could generate endlessly as long as the caster's mana could support the consumption. Aaron needed to target the caster himself. As long as he could take care of him, the snake's mana body would dissipate on its own. So he prepared to launch his assault on Ozen Jr. as soon as he got out of the snake's attacking zone. Aaron triple-stacked blitz steps and approached his opponent. He started with his kick work this time. His legs were already wrapped in lightning. But with triple stacking of the movement spell, the lightning streams looked like they had come alive, flying in every direction they could think of. Ivor smiled at the incoming kick. Because unlike before, he could see and pursue his opponent's attacks just fine. That was because his body stats had risen as a result of the beat contract spell. Plus, Ivor's time element artifact was still working for him. That gave him the confidence and skill to deal with Aaron's insane speed. He had to admit that Aaron was better than him in executing lightning element spells. The reason he thought Aaron was fighting normally was that he was dependent on his artifact. Ivor didn't like there was a better lightning element user than him. He subconsciously wanted to harm Aaron because of jealousy and envy. Ivor acted on those thoughts. He used his artifacts to their limits and made Aaron get off balance with his own footwork. then aimed a punch at Aaron's neck, targeting Aaron's Adam's apple. Aaron was again shocked by how deep Ivor had hidden his trump cards, not unlike him. The guy had shown only a portion of his artifact's full potential. He saved that effect to be used with his beast contract spell, giving him the much-needed edge he was looking for. Okay. That's enough to get a sense of how things are. Reen, prepare yourself. Faux beast contract spell. Aaron shouted in his head as he saw the fist drawing close on him. Chapter 204, Concede. Okay. That's enough to get a sense of how things are. Reen, prepare yourself. Faux beast contract spell. Aaron shouted in his head as he saw Ivor's fist drawing close to him. Reen started the job she was assigned to do and Aaron's transformation started taking place. Aaron didn't expect the beast contract spell would elevate one's body stats to this level. Otherwise, he would have executed the beast contract spell long ago. Aaron's transformation followed the same route Ivor's had. His skin had manifested scales that were nearly identical to the one Ivor had. Aaron somehow got out of the opponent's attacking zone for the time being. Then he used his buffed movement speed to create a distance between the ranker, his beast, and himself to complete the transformation. Aaron transformed a touch quicker than Ivor, which could be attributed to the former's mastery and compatibility with the spell. He too started looking like a snake man clad in lightning. Then there were his elevated body stats. Reen had done a fine job mimicking the effects of the beast contract spell. Because he knew she could have jumped overboard and boosted his body stats more than the spell allowed for. But she didn't do that. Instead, she had chosen to keep it as real as it was possible. Your pet is quite capable of listening to your orders. Aaron suddenly heard Alefe's remark on Reen doing her job well. But he ignored it. Because the snake and its master were drawing close. The purple lightning snake was first to arrive. Aaron again dodged the snake's biting attack and decided to counter it with his attack. Ivor was running in his direction too. So he was the one to execute the blitz storm this time just as Ivor got within the range. The AoE kicked off with Aaron as the center. The beast with mana body got the most brunt of it. Ivor was relatively safe but this was still a significant blow to him. Aaron finally decided to end the task of testing the beast contract spell's effect by getting serious with Ivor. He knew Alfei's buffs wouldn't last long. So he needed to wrap this battle soon. The next couple of moments were kind of a blur for Ivor. That was because Aaron had suddenly burst with exceptional power and control over his beast contract spell. It almost felt like he could be close to being an E-ranker. Aaron returned every punch and blow he was dealt with. He too beat Ozan Jr. to a sorry state before launching the blitz bolt over his face to finally neutralize him. Aaron had to admit Ozan Jr. had a monstrous talent. It looked like Aaron had an upper hand in the battle. And he did. After considering his battle history from his previous timeline, he was projected to win by a wide margin against the guy. Yet Ivor Ozan had closed the gap pretty well using his time and resources. Plus he had Aizen Ozan behind him backing him up. Not to forget the fact that Ivor was extremely talented. Aaron knew that he would have been long beaten to a pulp even if he had the same elevated perception of time he was feeling when dealing with Ivor. If he didn't have his experience, Aaron knew Ivor would have come out on top even with all his buffs remaining active. Ivor collapsed on the ground not long after Aaron decided to end his battle. One could say that Ivor's agony that came with the realization of not being the leading lightning element close combat expert of his generation would keep his mood foul for days on end. But Ivor was not the only one who was neutralized by his opponent. There were sounds of another two bodies dropping on the ground. Aaron looked in the direction of the sound and found out that his team's Berserker and Ranger had been finally neutralized by Jason. Jason too looked at Aaron and then all the unconscious bodies laying around the battle ring. If this was a real fight, Aaron would have the most number of kills by now. But that didn't prevent Jason from approaching the guy. You were as good as I thought you would be, Aaron. However, if you kept swimming in the small pond, you would always remain an average nobody. Before we resume our battle again, I was wondering if we could chat for a while when the match gets over. Jason asked Aaron with stoic expressions. But alas, a certain someone was in the mood to talk. We might meet, Jason. But that won't be today. Let's just get this shit over with. Jason heard Aaron's reply and sighed. The guy was still as slippery as an eel even now. The least he could do was show him that there was a sky above the sky. Jason soon geared up another intensive battle. He prepared his mana circuits to cast his go-to spells. Aaron made a statement just as he was about to attack. Not to him. But to the referee of the match. I wish to forfeit White Raven Crew's win after my team's active participation. The reason being is that I'm bloody, beaten, and exhausted. Aaron said nonchalantly and then looked at Jason who was too stunned to reply anything. Almost half the people in the audience wanted to fight with him because of his exceptional performance and some guiding words he would offer sporadically to his opponents. What Aaron had said was an only half-truth. He was indeed bloody and beaten. But he could have still carried on with the match. Or at least try to play another round with him. I should just stay as far away as I can from this guy, thought Aaron as he started to walk towards unconscious Renita to check up on her. This was after the referee approved his request. This was the first time White Raven crew had conceded a match of its initiative. And it would be its last as well. Chapter 205, Masochist. Did I see that right? Did this Aaron guy also have the beast contract spell from the beginning? The match was over. But the audience's discussion about what they had seen was not. One stunned guy asked his buddy standing nearby. The other guy was equally shocked by what he had just seen. I didn't even know such a spell existed before. Why would that black hair guy take the beating from Ivor if he was so op? The other guy couldn't help asking. A third guy pitched in to comment. That Aaron guy's ranking matches always turn out to be like the one we just saw. He gets his ass handed to him by his opponents before he barely manages to score a win. This guy had seen more of Aaron's experiment-centric matches. The first guy who had heard this had a face that said he had some sort of realization. Oh. So he is a masochist. Hey, watch your tongue, big guy. Who are you calling a masochist? Ewan just likes to try new spell combos in his matches. He'll beat everyone's asses with everyone's a sweat if he decides to play seriously. You understand that? A certain auxiliary member of White Raven crew decided to put his shadow leader's case forward. The three guys looked at each other confusingly. Then they tried to recall what the guy had just said to them. They could barely decode what he had just said to them in their minds. My man, don't eat your meals when it is piping hot. Look what it has done to you. The second guy said this to Raimi with a straight face. It seemed he really believed Raimi's lisp was due to him eating his food eagerly while it was hot. Fuck you. This is how I've always talked. You are here to pick a bone with White Raven Kvu, aren't you? So be it. Let's have a wanking match tomorrow. I'll be sued to bust your balls at that time. Raimi felt angry. Not because he was called out for his lisp, not really. But he had to punish them for their comment on his idol anyway. Thankfully, Anna and Belle come to do the damage control. Sigh. Raimi, how many times have we told you not to argue with random people? How will you silence the entire audience who has watched Aaron's matches till now? Let things slide sometimes. Hi there, fellow students. Forgive our teammates' rude remark. But yes, if you want to fight with us, it can be arranged. What will it be? Anna was smiling. And she looked cheerful while she highlighted Raimi's challenge too. But the trio could not find that smile to be comforting. Then it realized White Raven crew's performance in the ranking match that took place just now. Nobody sane would want to invest their merps on a losing bet. So one of the guys quickly came forward to deny the challenge. And the matter was sorted there. Anna was right, though. The entire crowd was abuzz with the performance that Ivor and Aaron had shown just now while using the beast contract spell. But then Aaron had to just go ahead and call it quits right when things were beginning to get interesting. That had turned the audience's mood sour. And they vented their anger by trashing Aaron for his weird fighting choices and cowardice. So Anna had to watch over Raimi, lest he runs his mouth off to every random student who makes any uncalled for comment on Aaron. Renita. Renita, wake up. Aaron was feeling tired as well when he was trying to wake his team's ranger up. Jason had made her overdraw on her mana, making her extremely exhausted. It resulted in her fainting as soon as her body couldn't take it anymore. Aaron, is that you? You can't stay a moment away from me, can you? Hee. After drinking some recovery potions and Aaron's multiple attempts to try to wake her up, Renita finally showed signs of gaining consciousness. But apparently, it was a slow process. Aaron smiled mirthlessly after he heard Renita's remark. He didn't try to correct her or get along with her dream-driven assumption. He just tried to wake her up for good. Why don't you stand up before I answer that? Renita, in case you've forgotten, we are still in the middle of the battle ring. Aaron had Renita's head on his lap. The caretaker had just handed him the vial of recovery potion and began to treat the other students who needed care. So the butcher had to take Renita's head rested on his lap before he administered the potion. Renita processed what was being said to her slowly. Then she looked around. Then she realized she was resting on Aaron's lap. Her cheeks turned red and her face showed unmasked awkwardness along with a slight bit of panic. Renita tried to get up from her position so fast that her forehead was hit hard against Aaron's chin. The guy who wanted to simply wake his team member up had come very close to losing the tip of his tongue with that act. Sorry Aaron. My bad. And thanks for treating me. I am good now. Aaron caressed his chin that had just been assaulted by Renita's forehead. He looked at Renita and casually replied after he sighed a bit. All is fine if you are fine. Never mind that. Did you think about what I had said earlier regarding your spell? I prioritized waking you up because I'll soon meet with Adept Marla and Ace Almera after this. If you agree to my suggestion, we must inform your trainer by today so that she can get her schedule sorted. Aaron said while looking at Renita with an expectant gaze. He had decided to invest his newfound wealth into his teammates so that they can give him better returns in the long run. The suggestion that he had given to Renita was only a part of it. Chapter 206, Elora Ruins and Ranker's Utopia. Chapter 206, Elora Ruins and Ranker's Utopia. How are you, Ernie? Do you miss me? Aaron heard a familiar voice on his holo call. He could see that the person was as cheerful and energetic as he remembered them to be. The holo call opened a spectral screen in front of Aaron which showed a real-time image of Nina. It made the butcher flash a radiant smile as he replied casually in response. Of course, Aunt Nina. Not a day passes by without me major missing you. And I don't even have to ask you this question. Your call now and then tells me all that I need to know. Hee hee. Aaron replied to Nina with teasing expressions on his face. The latter puffed her cheeks while she made her dissatisfaction known. You seldom call me on your own. So I have to. And why does it sound like you take pride in the fact that I miss you more than you miss me? If anything, you should be ashamed of yourself. Ha ha ha. I was merely pulling your leg, Aunt Nina. Of course, you can call me anytime you want. My schedule won't allow me to always pick them when you do. But I'll be sure to call you back when I miss them. I'm doing well. And I have even greater news to share with you. Aaron expressed another reason for his happiness. Nina was excited for Aaron too. She couldn't help asking as soon as Aaron finished delivering the news. Oh. A recluse like you can find joy in doing something. That's news. Tell me what it is. I wouldn't call myself a recluse now. Hee hee. I'm part of the team known as White Raven Crew, did you forget? The news I have is related to my plans related to Poti Wunwing. Aaron flashed a knowing smile towards Nina. The latter could see in his eyes that it was something substantial. The Seer Rank Poti Wunner asked eagerly. Enough beating around the bushes, Ernie. Tell me what it is. Hee hee hee. You'd be surprised. I have become a disciple of a master-ranked Poti Wunner Master Levine de Montmorency. She'll soon start personally teaching me. Aaron looked at Nina with an expression that screamed, how cool am I? The healer was stunned for real before flashing a genuine smile of pride and happiness. That's awesome news, Ernie. I bet you'll be even more successful than me in Poti Wunwing in the future as long as you don't slack off. So you were really interested in Poti Wunwing, huh? I thought your crush on me had more hand to play in you taking up Opti Wunwing than anything else. Hee hee. Nina teased Aaron a bit. But the guy didn't shy away from admitting that fact either. You are right, Aunt Nina. It started that way, yes. But now I'm genuinely looking to make a career in it. I've never shied away from admitting that I like you and what you do in the first place. After all, you are a very special existence in my life. Aaron fawned over Nina with his glib tongue. The latter was pleased and felt more secure than ever before. But her teasing didn't end there just because Aaron's words worked on her. Little rat, you say that now. But tell me honestly, how many hookups have you had in the academy so far? Aaron paused for a while and pondered over it. Then he started counting with his finger. That got Nina riled up. Are you a rat in heat? Girls in the academy have become too easy. Umph. You'll die of exhaustion, Ernie. Aaron burst into laughter after he heard that. He tried to make the misunderstanding go away that he had created himself. Relax, Aunt Nina. I was just kidding with you. Moreover, what's up with you? Where are you? I can see that you are not in the city of Ozan, that's for sure. Aaron asked while looking behind Aunt Nina. The holographic screen of the holocall appeared very lifelike due to its clarity, which allowed the butcher to observe the ruins of some old buildings he could see behind Nina. Oh yes, Ernie. I forgot to tell you. I decided to follow your advice and not stay in the city of Ozan anymore. This is the final stage of the Seer rank, and my ranking technique has practically stopped working. I've decided to take the route of forced breakthrough. Currently, I'm at the Elora ruins just outside the Edinburgh Kingdom. There's been a rumor that some spatial distortions have been observed in the ruins. As a result of everyone thinking the same thing, Elora ruins have become active again with adventurer parties. Ranker's Utopia. An explored Ranker's Utopia gives rise to so many possibilities. Everyone is here to try their luck. And I'm one of them. I've teamed up with some old associates of mine. Elora ruins attract a lot of beast hordes from time to time. So many parties need to cooperate while also competing with each other. It's chaos out here. But I'm enjoying this thrill I've been missing for a long time. Hee hee. Aaron was shocked when Nina shared her latest update. From his past timeline, he had heard about Elora ruins and the Ranker's Utopia found there. A Ranker's Utopia was a separate personal dimension created by a sage ranker from the past. This was just before they attempted to achieve a forced breakthrough at the end of their lifespan. A ranker's utopia, or just utopia, existed for the sage rankers to choose their successors and carry on their mantle. It was designed for low-ranked entities that hadn't progressed further in their ranking journeys. A ranker's utopia will test the brave adventurers who take up the challenge to explore it and everything that it has to offer. The separate dimension would spell doom and despair to the unlucky candidates. But it could turn out to be the one-way ticket to success for a few special or lucky rankers. There had been a lot of cases of rankers getting lost and never being seen after they entered rankers' utopia. In addition, there were a few incidents in which rankers who inherited the legacy of the utopia achieved unbridled success. Chapter 207, Shamrock. Nina was trying to try her luck in the Allura ruins. Utopias held many secrets within them. In the separate dimension set up by sage rankers, there were several ways for rankers to resume their ranking journey, bypassing their bottleneck. If they were lucky or talented enough to acquire them. Nina wasn't behind her ranking journey in any way. It was just that progressing in the B rank was an extremely challenging and time-consuming process. It would make the ranker feel that they were not progressing in their ranks at all. Forced breakthroughs were spontaneous. They didn't have normal limitations that would be placed on the ranker if they only limited themselves to practicing ranking techniques. She believed that she should try her luck at forced breakthroughs instead of just following the standard routine. "And Nina, you don't need me to tell you that you should be careful in exploring ruins and any potential ranker's utopia if there is indeed one at that place. I'm sure you would take excellent care of yourself. Plus, your job as a healer is always at a relatively safer spot than the rest of your team. Ranker's utopia is suitable for those who are prudent enough to look for opportunities. So I won't try to dissuade you from what you are planning to do either. But will you do something for me if I tell you? Without asking questions, that is." Aaron suddenly asked with a face that said he was serious. Nina didn't know where the stoic shift came from. But she didn't mind giving in to Aaron's simple demands anyway. "What is it, Ernie? Anything serious?" Aaron shook his head before answering. "First you have to promise that you won't ask questions. Only then will I be able to tell you." Nina heard this and felt a bit dubious about what Aaron was trying to pull here. Yet her affection didn't allow her to say no to the guy. Sigh. "All right, Ernie. What is it? I might be needed somewhere else soon. So you need to wrap things up." Aaron nodded before saying what he had intended to say. "I have a solid lead that says that one will find the entrance to the ranker's utopia right in the middle of a worn-out, dome-shaped construction at the northeastern side of the ruins known as a Junta's Temple. I don't have exact information about how to activate the mechanism to make the entrance appear. But this should be enough of a lead for you and your team to find out on your own. Grab whatever you can from the ranker's utopia and get out of it as soon as you hear temple bells ringing in your ears. You don't wait for a second longer after you hear the bells. Be quick on your feet. Can you do this for me?" Nina was about to ask her question right after Aaron finished. But by pressing his index finger against his lips, Aaron reminded her of the promise she had made. "I know you have a lot of questions. But let's just say that I have found a reliable backer to help me with a few things. And he doesn't want to make his association known." Aaron used bullshittery to explain what he knew from the past timeline. That's right. He had already known about there being a ranker's utopia being discovered in the Allura ruins. But that event was bound to happen some years from now on. The news had spread through the kingdom and beyond. And a lot of high-level rankers had participated in exploring the separate dimension. Some died, while others who survived had brief bursts of fame and success. Aaron had heard that high-leveled rankers who had explored the utopia at that time had come up with an unwritten rule. It was to run for the exit as soon as they heard the bells getting rung throughout the dimension to avoid calamity on themselves. Apart from this small bit of detail, the only other information that was leaked to the masses was the utopia's entrance. All the other details had been kept away from the low-level rankers of that time. So Aaron of that time had limited information. Rankers' utopia wasn't an ordinary place to wander about. It was mainly explored by rankers of D rank prowess and above. Low-leveled rankers could also explore the utopia if it was made by the sage creator taking them into account. But even in that event, the risks to low-level rankers were just higher. That was the reason exploration of the ruins and utopias was limited to high-ranked entities. There were always low-ranker daredevils who would gamble on their luck. But most of them would end up missing, dead, or worse traumatized for life. Ernie, sometimes the mystique you maintain makes me worry about you. But it also has its charm, I won't lie. Hee hee. It's not that I don't trust your wits. I do. Still, I also hope your backer isn't leading you by the nose. It seems you want me to explore the utopia in a hush-hush manner. But what should I say to my party? Nina didn't take much time to agree with Aaron. She only asked how he wanted her to deal with the whole thing. Simple. Tell them that someone who has explored the utopia before your visit has tipped you. Also, Don't keep the information to yourself after you are done exploring. Sell it anonymously to multiple parties and earn profits from it. It should also help you cover your tracks after others get involved. You'll have a week to explore the utopia before the mystical sound of bells spreads across the entire dimension. That should be enough time for you to wrap things up for good, Aaron said while scratching his chin. He also gave Nina a few more details that he could remember about Elora's utopia. With utmost focus, the healer listened to the butcher's suggestions and was determined to follow them. You say you have limited information, Aaron. But the kind of information you have, if it's true, is the most crucial one that I and my party could use to our advantage. Although I don't trust your backer, I trust you. So don't worry. I'll follow all your suggestions the way you want me to. If there's nothing else, I'll be hanging up. Nina seemed to be in a hurry. Aaron guessed her party was about to move from their resting place. He just flashed a sly smile after he heard Nina's reply and asked with lewdness laced in his voice. Oh, there's one more thing. What's the color today? It took a while for Nina to understand what Aaron was asking her. She blushed a bit before speaking with confidence and tease. It's a shamrock-colored one with white stripes. Imagine that, little rat. I'll cut the call now. Leave you alone for some self-help maybe. Hee hee. Nina cut the call giggling. It was about time she and her party made a move on Elora's utopia. Chapter 208, Aaron vs. Rami. Are you ready, Rami? Aaron asked his auxiliary team member. The warm and breezy evening was as uneventful as usual. The team members had found some time from their busy schedule to practice their skills. Aaron was going to work on Rami today. It's been a few weeks since the White Raven cruise match with the Stormborns. Jason had tried to contact Aaron again. But Aaron delayed the talk for now, saying he had too many things to take care of, which was a genuine reason all along. Rami had an untapped potential that Aaron had seen when he fought the guy in this timeline. That's why he decided to put his merps to work on the guy. Aaron spent his merps to get the guy some spells and resources that suited him. He also trained him by tweaking his close combat style a tiny bit. Now it was time for the butcher to test the returns on his investment. I am weedy when you are, Ewan. Rami was excited. Or maybe the word excitement was an understatement. The guy had started worshipping Aaron instead of fanboying him ever since Aaron had put his time and resources to help him. Of course, Scrooge would never give things for free. He had told Rami he needed to return the merps he had invested in installments. But the sound element ranker didn't see it as something unjustified. He had also decided in his mind that he would follow his idol's rules about money and everything else and make them his own. Good. Now show me what you got. The other members of the White Raven crew stopped their practices after hearing Aaron's command to start the battle. They too had seen their shadow leader training Rami for all these days now. They wanted to know how much the auxiliary member of their team had improved. Rami nodded at Aaron and turned serious. He knew the guy in front of him wouldn't forgive him if he showed him some half-assed performance. Aaron might just stop all his efforts to train him altogether if his performance in this practice match wasn't satisfactory. The surreal sound sword spell was activated by Rami. But the execution was a bit different than Rami's last time. Instead of manifesting swords made of tangible sound waves, he was using the real sword. The sword just had the spell-induced sound waves running through it, making it vibrate a small amount and producing a distinct sharp-pitched sound. It was as if Rami's sword was trying to sing in its language. And instead of using the spell as a mid-range attack like the last time, Rami was planning to use it as a close combat aid. These were suggestions given to him by Aaron, enabling him to explore the potential of being a knight while keeping the core of his spells mostly unchanged. Since it was only running sound waves through a real sword, the silent incantation didn't take long and was almost instantaneous. Rami's mastery over his previous spells had improved too, making him able to cut the execution time while ensuring better output. Aaron drew his guitars. The two ran at each other before their weapons finally clashed. And Aaron immediately felt Rami's drastic improvements. Rami's overall expertise hadn't changed much. But his opponents would dread entering a close combat battle with him. That was because his sword that had sound waves running through it would pass those waves through his opponent's weapon, making it vibrate uncontrollably. But that was not all. Up close, the sound vibrations would also affect the opponent's reflexes as the sound waves would travel through the air and affect their auditory senses. Rami's opponent would get disorganized and their weapon control would go into disarray every time they made contact with Rami and his sword. And this was just because of the change in the execution of one simple spell. Aaron wasn't immune to the silent debuffs applied by Rami's spell either. In fact, he was still better off since his body and bones had been flexible because of his transformation. Had it been a normal ranker, they would have been debuffed even more. The vibration caused him to lose his grip on his guitars for a short moment. And that short moment was all it took for Rami to parry and attack Aaron. Now that he had the chance, he took advantage of his attack against the butcher. One of Aaron's guitars, Dicerus left, was dropped by him. And his defense cracked. Raimi exploited it by holding Aaron's left hand and running another series of sound waves through it. Aaron felt like his brain got fuzzy. His ears started ringing and his eyes could only see the world as some blurred hollow call displayed over a shaky spectral screen. Raimi pressed on and followed his attack with another swing of his sword now that he had caught his opponent and idle in a groggy state. The sword was about to make contact with Aaron's left side, which was defenseless because of the dropped weapon. Alas, Raimi didn't know about Aaron's transformation and his body's adaptability under external influences like this. The sound waves should have made it more difficult for Aaron's muscles to function normally. His bones should have resonated with the sound waves, making his skeletal structure vibrate. As a result, the joints would be affected. But Aaron's body mitigated these effects because of its flexibility. It allowed the sound waves to pass through it without the muscles being adversely affected as a result. Thanks to his transformation, Aaron was able to wake up sooner than Raimi had anticipated. As soon as he regained his senses, he cast seated perception and stunning speed at the same time. It seems I underestimated the guy. He has potential. Aaron thought as he saw Raimi moving in slow motion to attack him while he was in the stagnated world. The butcher knew he would have suffered a bit if he hadn't cast his time element spells at this time. Aaron moved out of Raimi's range of attacks a little. He adjusted his stance in a way that he would be able to attack his opponent from the waist down, by crouching under the incoming sword. Aaron balled his fist and ran blitz bolt through it before making it land on Raimi's almost defenseless stomach. The butcher had shown a modicum of mercy on his teammate and controlled the lightning element spell's effect as well as the force behind his punch to make it easier for him to recover from the attack. Raimi Richards, you are doing well. But I'm too selfish, you know. I won't allow you to come out in a better light when you are fighting against me. Aaron thought to himself as his punch hit the intended spot. Chapter 209, Op Raimi. But it seemed that Raimi was expecting this. Because he had already executed another sound element spell on his body that would allow him to send invisible sound waves through his attacker's body at the point of contact. The sound waves flowed through Aaron's arms that he had used to punch Raimi. In the stagnated world, he could sense the sound waves vibrating his skin as they passed through his body. This caused his muscles to be unable to maintain the force they were backing the punch with. With such debuffs put in place, even hitting this guy is a sin now. Why do I suddenly feel like I've created a monster with an always smiling face? Aaron did not regret improving Raimi up for real. But he regretted the fact that he wasn't completely immune to the guy's effect despite having a transformed body. That would only mean Raimi's attacks would be even more effective on normal rankers. Which in turn could mean the sound element knight getting more zealous towards him. The punch finally showed its effect on Raimi who was now curling forward to deal with the blunt force's impact. But even with that natural reaction taking place, Raimi didn't forget to use his sword to swing at Aaron. Aaron parried the sword with his katars easily. Due to his time element spell combo, he did not need to worry about the guy just experimenting with his newfound tuning. Or so Aaron thought. Raimi's silent incantation was taking place right behind him. Aaron could see the runic patterns getting printed in the air. Raimi. The guy had been using silent casting ever since his match started with the butcher. Aaron didn't panic. Raimi's punch would cause him to be interrupted, and consequently, fail to cast his spell. Or at least that's what the butcher was hoping for. But he had underestimated Raimi's resolution. The guy bit his lips and endured the pain caused by Aaron's punch. Then the blitz bolt affected him. In addition, the opponent's lightning spell also helped him feel less pain at the point of contact due to its inherent stun effect. This resulted in him being able to endure the pain without breaking his spell execution. Aaron's onslaught continued in the stagnated world. Raimi endured all the punches and slashes, coordinating his counter and strengthening his defense over time. It would have been easy for Aaron if he had targeted Ram's vital spots. But he didn't do that. The butcher was trying to test his knight's potential in close-range battle after all. It would defeat the purpose if the fight ended too quickly. Raimi shouted to his heart's content after sustaining a barrage of attacks from Aaron. His silence casting had been completed. He now had multiple sound swords levitating around him, ready for his beck and call. The sound element ranker didn't wait for the blurred opponent that was Aaron to hit him some more. He willed some of the sound swords in front of him to attack the butcher while he kept some around himself to act as the first line of defense. Impressive. This guy can become more overpowered than me when fighting with multiple opponents. Aaron cancelled his time element spell combo and thought to himself. He realized that Raimi could tackle multiple opponents of the same rank simultaneously without losing his ground thanks to his unique battle style. The surreal sound sword spell allowed him to manifest multiple swords made of compressed sound waves that would hum with a distinct sharp noise around him. These swords could be used for an attack as well as defense, making it easy for him to handle multiple enemies while ensuring his safety. The line of swords Raimi used as a defense made it difficult for Aaron to approach the guy. Plus, the swords he had used for the offense were easy to break. But there was a catch. The swords were meant to be destroyed by Raimi's enemies. Once the sword is destroyed, there would be shockwaves of compressed sound waves getting spread in all directions. It was enough for the opponent's auditory and other senses to be affected by the sound waves being emitted so close to oneself. That's what happened with Aaron. A sound sword would come his way, and he would try to parry it. But even with his most efficient parry move, the said sound sword would then just detonate right after the point of contact with Aaron's guitars. The sound waves would travel through Aaron's weapons and wreak havoc inside his body, starting from the hands he was using to hold his weapons. It would also affect his senses, making it easy for other sound swords to approach and surround him. The biggest advantage of silent incantation was the fact that it wasn't entirely dependent on the caster's mana. While maintaining the caster's mana consumption under control, it could tap into the surroundings' mana and enable them to get more out of their spells. The disadvantage of silent incantations having longer casting time was already taken care of by Raimi's fine-tuned battle style. And he didn't forget to maximize his advantages as well. Whenever a sound sword would get destroyed, he would just manifest two more to take its place. As a result, Aaron was soon surrounded by an array of sound swords aiming at him. The butcher didn't panic. He straightened up his back and looked at Raimi with a smile. "You have improved quite well, Raimi. I must give you that. But there are a few things you need to learn as well." Raimi felt like he had achieved something monumental after hearing praises from Aaron. He knew Aaron was kinda going easy on him. But he also knew the guy wasn't a type to praise someone just like that. "What is it, Ewan? What do I need to do to improve?" "Well, for starters, don't give your enemy a chance to talk mid-battle." Raimi heard a voice behind his ears and then his legs became limp. He fell to his knees while still looking at Aaron in front of him, which soon turned out to be his after-image. Chapter 210, Healing Magic 01. Aaron could have knocked Raimi out. But he settled for breaking the guy's stance with his lightning-powered punch. This time, Aaron also sent Blitz Bolt through Raimi's body the way he sent his sound wave through his. Due to this, both were about to fail their spells. But Raimi had to give in first because Aaron's transformation allowed him to sustain Raimi's debuff on him for longer. Plus, Aaron's BTP value was higher than his teammate. In the brief stalemate they experienced, Raimi broke first, causing him to suffer the fate of being defeated. "That wasn't cool, Ewan. You say not let your enemy talk, and yet you talked with me yourself," Raimi said while grabbing Aaron's hand that the latter had offered to make him get up from the ground. The butcher shrugged his shoulders before saying, "I meant not to let your opponent talk when you have all the advantages or have them cornered. I didn't say don't engage with your enemies yourself. You should, when you want to buy time," Aaron said and started walking towards his other teammates who were standing at a distance from them. Raimi followed him behind while asking him for some more tips. "Ewan, is there anything else I need to improve on?" Aaron didn't look back after hearing Raimi's question. He scratched his chin and pondered a bit before saying, "Your silent incantation takes time. Instead of suffering in silence, it would do you better if you followed your earlier strategy of buying time with, let's say, your intriguing usage of words. Your swordplay needs a lot of work too. But even with your shoddy skill, it has allowed you to defend yourself while the silent incantation takes effect. With enough mastery and efficient spell use, it could turn out to be your biggest advantage in future." Aaron said and beckoned at Anna to come forward with his index finger. The healer did as she was asked, a bit tensed by the test she was soon going to undertake. Aaron had gathered his team to test the skills of his other team members that hadn't participated in the team's matches much. Among the trio, Raimi was the first to be tested. Anna was the next. "Anna, are you ready?" "Don't worry. For today, just your healing skills will be tested. You haven't even practiced combat arts. So there's no use testing that. Because you would suck at it?" Aaron gave it to Anna straight without mincing his words. Aaron's first half of his speech made her feel happy. As long as she could put her healing skills to the test and nothing else, she was pretty confident. But it was the latter part of his speech that made her upset a bit. But the butcher didn't pay attention to Anna's puffed cheeks and carried on. "Raimi, come forward. Anna, heal this guy. I've given him a few blunt injuries as well as some guitar wounds just for this test. Treat them all." Anna looked at Raimi as if he was some poor beggar. Aaron had used him as a guinea pig to test Anna's skill. But the guy himself wasn't bothered by Aaron's treatment of him at all. It only made sense in Raimi's head that Aaron would be this efficient with all that he does. Anna was a wood element user. Her healing spells augmented the effectiveness of her elemental affinity. As a result, she was able to heal most normal injuries in a jiffy without expending much mana. Anna walked up to Raimi and looked at his injuries at close range. Then she retrieved a seed from her storage space and dropped it on the ground. Anna then executed her spell, Beanstalk Betterment, which made the seed she had just dropped take roots in the ground and sprout with super accelerated speed. The seed soon turned into a healthy-looking, lush green plant, which was twice Raimi's height. It exuded freshness and vitality. It also dispersed a mild pleasant aroma in the air, calming the spectator's senses. Under the guidance of Anna's mana sense, the tree had its vines wrapped around Raimi's limbs. The vines found their mark, which was all the injuries on Ram's body, and started working on them by dispersing healing magic. Raimi felt like all his injuries were getting anesthetized because of the cooling effect the vines had on his skin upon the point of contact. The cooling effect soon seeped deeper into Raimi's body, reaching into his internal organs and healing his blunt force injuries. Once the internal injuries had been taken care of, Anna focused on treating the catarrh wound on Raimi's body. The cuts weren't deep enough, so it became easier for her to close them quickly. Raimi was fine a few moments after Anna's spell was executed. Raimi was satisfied with what he had experienced so far. But Aaron wasn't. He needed more. Anna, please recover his mana as well. Aaron requested Anna as if it were a command. This was Anna's real test. Recovering your mana passively or with your ranking technique was one thing. But recovering it for someone else was something else. It required the expertise of a healer. Anna recovered another of her plant seeds from her storage and followed the same procedure. The plant that popped up this time had the same height as the previous one. But instead of being pure green, the leaves of the tree were azure in color. The azure tree didn't have any vines. Instead, it had flowers with buds of pollen packed in their center. Under Anna's mana sense guidance, the pollens were dispersed all around Raimi. They were dissolved into his skin right after they came in contact. The mana core in Raimi's body was revolving rapidly as it was refilled with its depleted mana. This time, the process lasted even shorter, allowing the knight to reach the peak of his status in no time. Chapter 211, Healing Magic 02. Raimi returned to his peak status. And everyone in the White Raven crew gave Anna approval with their words. She was meant to be the party's healer in the future after all. Her position on the team was unique. Aaron gave his nod to Anna too. But it seems that he still had something else to add. That was a good healing spell execution, Anna. And your off-battle mana recovery spell is very effective too. But this was an ideal case scenario. A healer is required to do their job while they are active on the field as well. What about your in-battle spells? Anna's mood turned serious again after realizing that her test wasn't over yet. Becky saw the change of the healer's expressions and tried to give her a breather. Aaron, why do we need to push her this hard this early when we don't require her to participate in matches? Anna has just broken through in her rank. Her spell execution is almost flawless despite her newbie status. I think we should just. Aaron looked at Becky apathetically before replying in a cold voice. Shut your mouth when you don't understand what I'm trying to do here, Rebecca. This isn't a ranking war where your life isn't at risk, regardless of what your opponent does. The Basank will open for all of the students soon. Do you know what that means? Becky wasn't expecting Aaron to turn so hostile towards her. She didn't understand what the guy was so hyper about. In addition to that, the name Rebecca being used instead of the usual Becky didn't go unnoticed by her. What does that mean? Becky decided to end the stare game with Aaron and finally indulged him in his question. It means soon the ranking wars will look like a child's game after you feel the real danger of being in a real battle, sans the Academy's safety net. That's when a party's test of strength truly takes place. The Basank will soon be open for all of us, not just me alone. First, you will be trained by Academy-approved hunters and adventurers in a few basic skills. Then your party will be able to partake in Basank missions collectively. This is when parties make it big or break for good. I want Anna to keep on training with that target in mind. I'm fine with her not participating in the ranking wars with us. I don't care if she wins or loses in her matches as long as she can keep up with us with her progress. That answer didn't convince Becky. She tried to counter Aaron's statement with her logic. If we can work without her in the ranking matches, we can work without her in the Basank missions. That's why I said shut your mouth when you don't understand what I'm trying to do here. The biggest difference between a ranking war and a Basank mission lies in whether you need a healer or not. You can participate in ranking wars without any healer and still come out fine. You cannot do the same in Basank missions. A party will pay dearly if it doesn't have a capable healer in it. Ranger and historian roles become significant in real-life missions as well. But the healer's role tops that chart. I want my party's healer to be capable in everything she does. I want her to be ready for any situation we might have to deal with. Because our survival lies in her hands. Most importantly of all, my survival lies in her hands. So training and testing her from the beginning makes sense. I don't know about you. But I like living. And I want to keep on living. If you want to die by hiring an unpolished healer, you'd need to find a different party. Aaron said bluntly while keeping his eyes focused on Becky. This girl is either consciously or subconsciously vying for my position. Aaron thought to himself. He didn't mind Becky's interference in his commands when it came to normal issues. But he wouldn't allow her to dictate the core team policies as per her whims. The butcher's speech again made the effect it sought to make. Becky looked like she would say something but she kept quiet in the end. He had realized that arguing with Aaron was sometimes more challenging than arguing with an unmovable wall. Aaron shifted his focus to Anna again before asking her. Well, are you up for the task? Anna nodded, after which Aaron divided the White Raven crew into 2 squads and arranged a mock battle. Anna was made to participate as a non-combat member in one of them. She was only required to heal her team members' injuries or fill their mana storage while the battle was taking place. There were 2 types of healing magic a healer could use to treat their team member. First was the passive healing that Anna had performed on Raimi. It consisted of using tools, arrays, herbs, and other items in conjunction with spells to heal a teammate of their injuries or refill their mana storage. Passive healing was useful after the battle got over or before it took place. The biggest advantage of passive healing was that it could be performed on multiple members simultaneously while ensuring the healer's mana doesn't get depleted that much. Its disadvantage would be the fact that healers won't be able to perform this type while their teams were moving or were participating in battles. Passive healing would just bolster and expedite the body's ability to heal. It wouldn't take part in the actual process itself. A healer's true test lies in the active healing skill. A healer proficient in active healing would be sought after by many well-known professional teams. A healer would otherwise be earning off-field through passive healing. That's why the class of healers was a special one. It would separate the talented healers from those average healers early in the game. Though, some healers still choose to remain off-field despite being talented at active healing. They were a different breed. Chapter 212, Historian Magic. In the active healing process, a healer was required to mimic the mana sense of those who were the target of their healing or recuperating magic. This was done with the help of their spells. Of course, there was no way it would be 100% accurate. But the good thing was it didn't have to be. Mana in the surrounding area was generally pure, unblemished, with no sign of anyone's mana sense. It would only be marked with mana sense when it was absorbed by rankers, making it part of themselves. It is the healer's responsibility to act as a mediator between the rancor and the unblemished mana. Then they would actively try to imbue that mana with the rancor signature using their spells. It required exceptional intelligence to sense the fluctuations of mana sense and adjust the active healing spells accordingly to make it work. The recuperated mana would get partially absorbed by the rancor. The healing of wounds would be similar to first aid in active healing. A healer recovering their teammates' mana would be a temporary top-up. The rancor's mana cores would eventually reject the mimicked mana thrust into their bodies. It was only a matter of time. Once the mana with mimicked mana sense had dissipated, rankers receiving first aid would return to their original condition regarding mana depletion. But before the mana dissipation takes place, rankers could use the mana their healers have provided them with to cast spells and keep things going for a while. Their spell's effectiveness would suffer a bit because it was being driven by the mana that was not theirs. The active healing skill had become a sought-after skill among rancor parties despite all its disadvantages when compared with passive healing because it offered rankers a way to fight back against a stronger foe. The side effects of active healing could always be dealt with passive healing after the battle is fought and won after all. Live to fight another day. This was what active healing emphasized. So it was natural that Erin wanted their healer to acquire the skill as soon as she could. No matter how impressive her passive healing skill was, Erin would judge her by her active healing performance. Erin observed Anna's performance while she took part in the team play and performed active healing on her teammates. Since she was immature, she was required to touch her target of healing before initiating the spell. It was obvious that the active healing she performed while moving around on the battlefield was not as effective as passive healing. And yet, Erin was satisfied with the newbie healer's performance. She really is a healer prodigy. It's worthwhile to invest resources in her. Erin thought to himself and clapped his hands, indicating that the mock battle was over. The healer had passed with flying colors in her test and Erin didn't hold back conveying what he felt to the healer and his teammates. But the newbie test wasn't over yet. There was still one guy remaining with his messy, light orange-brown hair and oversized spectacles smiling nervously towards his teammates. He was soon called upon. Bell, you are up. Bell was patted on his back by Steve right after Erin called him up. The guy was about to almost fall off on his face because of that. He barely managed to keep his stance intact and came forward as a result of Steve's push. Erin. I've just broken through the F rank and all my spells are not fine-tuned to the way I like yet. Isn't it better if we keep this test until tomorrow? I can. Erin cut the guy off before he could finish. Bell, we understand that you are nervous. But you don't have to be. We are not planning to drop you off the team just because you performed poorly. Neither are we intending to treat you especially because you performed exceptionally well. This is a test to see how we measure up individually in our ranking abilities. It is done now so we could adjust our team play based on the data we have on ourselves. So relax. Erin pacified Bell with the right words. He was cold and sharp with his words when he needed to. But he had also shown how to be encouraging in the right direction by the way he handled Belle. "Al, all right? What do I need to do?" Belle asked while adjusting his glasses that didn't need adjusting. Aaron decided to tease him a bit. "Well, the mock battle that took place just now. Can you trace the entire event with your historian magic?" Aaron asked while folding his arms. It was as if he had asked Belle the most basic thing he expected his historian to do. The latter started sweating buckets after hearing Aaron's demands. A historian's magic involves finding the residue mana signature in the surrounding environment. The mana signature was the imprint of mana sense left on the items and objects handled by the rankers. The residue mana signature would be abundant or sporadic depending upon the way the rankers handled items or behaved in their surroundings. But it was never zero. Rankers would always leave their mana signature behind even if they merely passed by the place. The residue mana signature would also dissipate with time. It would turn almost negligible after a certain period has passed. It was a historian's job to make sense out of the residue mana signature. A talented historian could trace the residue mana signature left behind the rankers even after days or weeks had passed. But like all magic, historians' magic also had its limits. Or to be precise, the historians too were bound by their talent and ranking status when it came to tracing the residue mana signature. A newbie like Belle couldn't trace the residue mana signature of so many individuals all at once. So it was natural that Belle had his face turn pale after hearing Aaron's expectations from him. Chapter 213, On-Field Assignments. A newbie like Belle couldn't trace the residue mana signature of so many individuals all at once. So it was natural that the historian had his face turn pale after hearing Aaron's expectations from him. Aaron. I don't think I'll be able to. Belle stuttered as he said that he would not be able to trace the mock battle that just took place. This is because of the sheer number of varying mana signatures involved in the event. But Steve's laughter broke his chain of thought along with halting his stuttering speech. Ha ha ha. He believed that to be real. Belle, relax. Aaron was just messing with you. At least I hope he was. Aaron. Aaron smiled lightly before nodding. Indeed. Belle, I was just trying to make you imagine the unexpected so that you'd feel well and perform well when the unexpected doesn't take place. You can trace mine and Raimi's battle. Only 2 signatures were involved. Shouldn't be a biggie. Belle's rapidly beating heart finally started returning to normalcy after he heard Aaron's confirmation. He nodded at his shadow leader and started walking towards the place the battle took place. Belle spread his mana sense across the entire battlefield. Then he sensed the residual mana signature in the surroundings and executed a historian-specific spell related to his element. Belle had the elemental affinity for fire. Since it was one of the great elements, it was easy for him to get his hands on the spell suited for him. Aaron had also helped the guy a lot by guiding him and loaning him the much-needed merps to buy those spells. The spell's name was Fire Trace. 2 figures made of fire appeared on the battlefield soon after Belle started executing the spell. They were identical to Aaron and Raimi. Furthermore, the flames radiated the same shade Belle's hair was. Belle looked like he was having a hard time as he was seen with his eyes closed and concentrating on something. He had a headache as soon as he had cast the spell. The headache would only increase with the number of residual mana signatures he had to trace. But 2 was still a manageable number for him. Suddenly, the 2 fire apparitions vanished from their original places and appeared right where Aaron and Raimi were standing before the battle began. Their posture was the same as that of the novice rankers who had fought there. Belle was sweating as he concentrated hard on keeping the spell active. His concentration finally paid off as his team members saw the fire apparitions move and attack each other the same way as Aaron and Raimi did with each other. This was sans the spells and spell effects they had at the time of the actual battle, of course. Raimi's historian spell execution wasn't perfect. There were cases when the apparitions would just stop moving unnaturally or completely disappear. But that didn't stop Belle from casting his spells. All theatrics put forward by the fire apparitions were silent, giving the impression of a mute play. The White Raven crew members saw their historian's performance and they were very satisfied with his performance. Well, most of them were. So compared to Anna, this guy is average. Still, I can make it work. Aaron thought to himself as he watched the historian's performance. His face looked devoid of blood as soon as his spell ended. The guy's face had droplets of sweat forming over it, indicating that he had exerted himself in maintaining that spell. Good job, Belle. You need to improve upon your tracing spell now. But that alone isn't enough. You need combat experience too. Those attack and defense type spells you've bought with the loaned merps ought to be practiced constantly so that you can use them when the situation arises. As a historian, Aaron reminded Belle not to ignore the combat spells just because he is a historian. It is customary for historians to stay in the back like healers. But it wasn't like they couldn't partake in battles at all. Aaron then looked at his other teammates before informing them about his plans. Steve, You would be in charge of training Anna and Belle with their combat-oriented spells. Remember, mock battles are one of the most efficient ways to improve on your spell executions in real time. Aaron looked at Steve and gave him the assignment, which the latter agreed to without a second thought. He then assigned his team members various tasks and goals before addressing the newbies again. In addition to improving their combat skills, Anna and Belle can't slack off on improving their class-specific skills. I don't care how you do it. And your status as a newbie ranker would only be considered as an excuse from now on. Do you guys understand? Anna nodded seriously at Aaron's question while Belle looked afraid of the hardships heading his way. But Aaron's address wasn't over. He focused on his entire team before saying aloud in a more serious tone than before. I won't always stay here in the academy. I have progressed further in the ranking journey than you guys. If my pace continues, it won't be long before I break into the ace rank. Once that happens, I'll be allowed to take up field assignments. I'll seldom be on the academy grounds after that. So you guys need to keep on working hard even without anyone there to monitor you starting from today onwards. Before joining, I had already made clear to you guys that the party we are forming now is going to continue even after we finish our academic years. And you guys agreed. That's why I'm helping you in every way I can to elevate your ranking potential. This is my investment in you guys, and I want returns. Hee. I hope you realize that I won't let you quit on me after spending so much time and resources on you guys. The White Raven crew will stay as White Raven crew inside and outside the Lionheart's Adventurers Academy. Aaron smiled at his crew members and declared his plans that were laced with some subtle threats. Then he expounded on what he was saying and gave each of his team members concrete goals to work upon. It seemed that the White Raven crew members were going to stay busy for a long time. Chapter 214, Slavery is Unfair. Did you guys do what I told you to do? Aaron asked Ron and Dino, who were standing in front of him with their necks slightly tilted towards the ground as if they were waiting for his orders. Ron stepped forward before reporting. Yes. Kind of. We have started spreading the rumors. But I'm not sure they'll hold up for longer. Ron said and waited for Aaron to answer. The latter nodded at him before adding. Thing about rumors is that they don't have to hold up. You don't have to worry about that. What about the possible candidates? Did you find any buyers for our small project? Ron's face turned grim after he heard that. The project Aaron was talking about was very dangerous. If their names get involved after the scene takes place, then death would be one of the lightest punishments they'd receive. Aaron, I have to ask before we do this. What did Sienna or her friends ever do to you? Why are you fixated on fucking them over? Ron asked with a careful expression and voice. Aaron just shrugged his shoulders before saying. Let's just say I don't like her. That should be enough for you to give you enough motivation to complete all the tasks I give you. Anyway, I'm waiting for my previous question to get answered. Ron just gave up after hearing Aaron being Aaron. He remained unclear over why he was so upset with Sienna or her friends. But just like the butcher, Ron was okay with anything as long as it didn't come to bite him in the ass. Sigh. There are takers. We have stayed anonymous for now by only using remote contacts. But we are not sure how we can keep that stay anonymous once things blow out of proportions. Ron, that's for you to figure out. Stay anonymous or come out of the woodworks. Either way, I'll cut ties with you if I see that the heat is about to reach me. I'd suggest you blame things on the cultists. Leave enough evidence to point the authorities in that direction when they take up the case, which they will. But that's just my suggestion. You can use it if you want to. And I'll let you figure out the details yourself. But make sure we only go for the highest bidder and rake enough profits to take these risks. Ron was irked by Aaron's usage of the word we when it came to profits. But he'd have to deal with all the risks while Aaron would stay in the background. Slavery is unfair. Ron thought as he started discussing the details of his next set of plans with Dino while Aaron was around. He wanted Aaron's opinion on his plans without asking for his opinion. Aaron shook his head and smiled lightly after seeing Ron's cunning in everything he does. The guy was as careful as him when dealing with shady things. If anyone could pull the plan he had on Sienna successfully while not getting Aaron involved, then that would have to be Ron. Aaron suggested a few corrections to Ron's plans after he heard them. By doing so, they would be able to at least blur the lines between truth and lie, making it nearly impossible for authorities to link the stunts to them. It was the weekend as usual for Edward Jenner. He was a lab supervisor for first-year LA students. And he was doing pretty well at his job. Not because LA paid him well. But because he was getting much-needed extra income from Sienna Slughorn and other rich students for helping them in their lab projects every so often. The help was almost risk-free. There were no ways to trace him as someone who was getting bribed. And the returns on his extra efforts were more than what he could have ever hoped for. So he was now used to spending his extra income on a few extra activities at the City of Lionhearts on weekends. And who could blame him? After all, The money should be earned so that you can spend it the way you choose. This weekend was not going to be any different. His pockets had just gotten deeper with the top-up he just received from his rich clients. Now he needed to vent out some of his stress. Edward had many vices. But booze, gambling, and hookers topped that list. So he first had some drinks. Afterwards, he headed to his known gambling den to try his luck. Alas, tonight was not his night. But Edward wasn't discouraged. The extra money had turned him into a big ball of positivity. So his high-on-life attitude made him think about visiting the brothel house. He was just going to leave the place after quitting his table. But he wouldn't have imagined that he'd meet with the most beautiful woman he had seen in a while without leaving his table. She graciously introduced herself as Elena. She was the most unsuitable person one could find at the gambling house. When Edward met her, he came to know from his known associates at the gambling den that she had almost lost everything. The young woman approached Edward and asked him if she could watch him play. Edward had no reason to refuse, so he simply said yes and decided to play another round. He had the money he needed after all. This woman's luck has been rotten for her. But it seems to have the opposite effect on people she comes in contact with. Hee. Edward thought internally and chuckled to himself. This was because he had started winning his hands ever since he had come in contact with Elena. Edward could see it in Elena's eyes that she was highly impressed with him. The latter half of time at the gambling places flew by in a jiffy. And the two gamblers came out laughing just when the den was about to close. Where to, Eddie? Elena asked with a knowing smile that almost flatlined Edward. It was time for him to exert the power of his bribed money and get into this young woman's pants. Edward thought and led Elena to the most luxurious place he could think of, Grand Hyatt. Not this place again. This is the place I had chosen to fuck someone's brains out. Sigh. At least we have matching tastes. Someone in Elena's head spoke up. She couldn't help chuckling after she heard the voice in her head. Chapter 215, Sending Edward Jenner Off. Sigh. At least we have matching tastes. Someone in Elena's head spoke up. She couldn't help chuckle after she heard the voice in her head. Elena and the voice in her head decided to proceed as planned. The plan was to make it appear that Edward suddenly won his gambling hands when he was Elena by bribing the den house in advance. Then use that as a base to establish a superficial relationship between him and Elena. Edward bought the most expensive suite to spend the night with Elena and led her inside it before closing the door for the night. Edward had lost his game wooing normal women that weren't hookers. So he was trying to figure some stuff out in his head when he heard Elena's voice. Edward, are you sure we are alone? Edward was confused by his companion's question. Then he thought she was worried about her security and anonymity, so he assured her with his words. Of course, Edward. Then why would I pay for the most expensive place and the most expensive suite in it? Hee. Are you trying to go behind someone's back? Are you cheating on someone with me? I'll be honest. I am flattered and still open to moving forward with what we have right now. Haha. Edward conveyed his feelings and eagerness to get on with the program even when he thought of the possibility of Elena having an extra something with him as her target. No, Eddie. I asked you because I want to eat you without leaving your bones behind. I'm hungry, you see. With her right hand, Elena caressed Edward's cheeks and said that in a soothing voice. Eat me up, you say. Kinky. I like that. Hee. Edward took Elena's body language as a cue to take his liberties with her. He tried to plant his hands gently on Elena's slim yet curvy waist when his vision suddenly changed. Elena had grabbed Edward's right hand just a few centimeters before it touched Elena's waist. Then she twisted his arm in such a way that it was dislocated from his shoulder and almost broke off from the joint. The twist had made him turn, making Elena see his back. Arg. Edward's ear-splitting cry rang in the Grand Hyatt's most luxurious room. However, it didn't make it past the room. That's because Elena had used her C-rank mana sense to isolate the room from the outside world. You fucking bitch, what are you doing? And you are not an F-ranker, are you? What do you want from me? Elena didn't respond. Suddenly, she broke all of Edward's limbs one by one, as if they were a dead tree's dry twigs. Edward couldn't express his agony with words. He was going to have a good time with a young and beautiful woman that wasn't a hooker. He wanted to please his fifth limb. But he would have never thought that all his other limbs would suffer the consequences of his carnal wishes. Edward was wiggling like a worm on the ground because the pain had been too unbearable for him. But the one who had caused the guy's worm-like condition didn't pay him much attention and started walking in the direction of the suite's entrance. Ron Damien entered through the door after Selena opened it. Elena closed the door behind him gently and led the guy in where Edward was. Ron Damien ignored Edward's cries and his weird moves on the ground because of the broken limbs and asked Elena. Same suite I had stayed in when I was with Julie. A predictable coincidence. Anyway. Reen, why did you have to break the guy's limbs? Elena voiced a hump before replying. The creep was trying to touch me. Edward shouted, laced with anger, before Ron Damien could comment. She fucking touched me first, damn it. Ron looked at Elena questioningly. The latter just shrugged her shoulders before making her opinion known. It's alright if you touch your food. It is weird when it touches you back. You, random guy, what the actual fuck is she on about? Edward asked Ron without knowing about his real identity. As a response, the latter turned back into his original appearance and sized Edward up with his gaze. Edward's pain was still there. But he still found it in him to process the emotion of surprise when he saw Ron shape-shifting into someone he had a vague memory of seeing at the LA grounds. Are you one of the LA students? What the fuck is happening over here? Are you behind all this? Aaron shrugged his shoulders before replying. That's not relevant right now, Mr. Lab in charge. What I want to know is, what did you tell to any of your LA colleagues before leaving the academy grounds for a weekend? Never mind. I'll just ask Reen to extract your memories after I kill you. Reen, do the honors. Aaron didn't want to waste time interrogating someone who he had decided to kill from the beginning. His about-to-be victim feared for his life for the first time since he had gotten into the situation after hearing Aaron's remark. He couldn't help try to reason with his potential killer. Wait. Please tell me, who are you? Do I know you? Whatever you think I did, I didn't do it. I'm innocent. And I can compensate you for whatever might have offended you in some way. Let's talk at least. Before we regret something. Aaron listened to Edward's negotiation 101 talk and answered without any expression. Innocent people get framed and killed all the time. You had played your part in framing me. Why should I not return the favor? Urank Edward would have tried to use spells to help get out of the situation. But Elena aka Reens had already damaged his mana core after breaking his limbs. So he was helpless despite being a senior ranker than Aaron. Nothing worsened Edward's irritation more than hearing Aaron mention playing a part in framing him. He had looked through his memories and had concluded that Aaron was speaking nonsense. Look here, young man. Bullying others with a girlfriend that has a higher ranking status than you will not help you. And I think there's been a misunderstanding. I barely recognize you as a LA student. How could I cause harm to you if I don't even know who you are? And what would you get by killing me? If anything, it is going to be a nightmare for you to deal with the consequences of killing a LA lab in charge. Aaron flashed an evil smile before replying. Oh, don't worry. Soon, LA staff and all the students would abhor you and your name after I'm done with a few things. No point dragging this any further. Reen, bon appetit. This was the last line Edward heard before his agonized soul was sent to the netherworld. Chapter 216, Fundraiser. I have extracted the guy's memories. There's nothing of significance that could backfire on our plan. Aaron heard Reen after she had finished him off without leaving anything behind. She shared the memories of her victim with her master after she was done extracting them. Aaron closed his eyes and experienced Edward's memories in the first person. He shifted through a lot of recent memory fragments and confirmed what Reen had said earlier. All right. Give me his ID stone. We'll need that as well, any identifiable stuff inside to plant the evidence. Aaron raised his hand and caught the ID stone thrown his way by his pet. Reen had already destroyed Edward's mana signature on the ID stone, making it easy for her master to look through her victim's stuff. Hot damn. The guy was loaded. Look at all these extals. We caught him on his payday. It's like catching a horned sturgeon and finding caviar within it. Hee hee. Aaron was pleasantly surprised to find his victim's storage space, so he impolitely moved the abundance of extals into his. He liked his victims when they dropped high-quality items and wealth. Of course, his victims couldn't share those feelings. Aaron then assumed the form of Edward Gina with the help of Reen's fusion with him. She aided him in controlling his shape-shifting to get the desired visual profile. Then she separated from her master and assumed the appearance of Elena, the young woman who was seen together with Edward. Edward aka Aaron waited in the room for Dawn to arrive. He could have left the crime scene early if he wanted to. The staff at the Grand Hyatt knew exactly what the supposed couple were going to do during their temporary stay. It would raise suspicion if he had left early. Raising the suspicion was fine this early in the game. But Aaron was thinking about the investigation that's take place after he unleashes his revenge on Sienna. He wanted there to be as few loopholes as possible, even if complete cover-up seemed like an impossible task. Now all Aaron needed was for his illegal slaves to do their job right. Ron of the Berserkers had been very busy these days dealing with his shady contacts. He had been tasked with handling the core part of Aaron's designs on Sienna's Slughorn. And he dreaded doing every part of it. Why wouldn't he? He was en route to hurt someone whose family was known to hold significant power and influence in Edinburgh. Therefore, he tried to think of a few possible ways the plan could turn out wrong and started implementing countermeasures for it. Ron wasn't a cynic like Aaron. Instead of assuming that everything would turn out wrong, he would build on the plans he was confident about. Ron and Damien had been asked to organize a secret event for LA students outside the LA grounds. Under Aaron's guidance, he had also started spreading rumors about the same. Among a select few students, rumors circulated that the event was organized by Edward Jenner to collect bribes in advance from students who could afford to pay. He would then make it easier for students to complete their lab assignments, making them pass their tests with flying colors. Almost every rich student knew Edward Jenner was a sellout. So the hush-hush news didn't come as a shock to them. But what they were furious about was the fact that they had already paid the guy for their upcoming projects in advance. This was because he had demanded that they pay him first before he could help them. Sienna along with her friends Vivi Lauren and Luna Cellini heard the news and were equally incensed. That was because they had already paid their dues. Sienna had paid multiple times more than the others to get extra benefits. Despite this, the wretched guy was holding a fundraiser outside the LA grounds after raking in the extals. But then another piece of news started circulating that an academic event regarding Poti-Wunning will take place. And the select few students who perform well in that event will get to attend the lectures of a B-rank potion master. All of these rumors were only circulated among students who had the background to pay for the bribe money. And they all naturally thought that Edward must have organized this fundraiser in anticipation of that event. The students who thought that they had beat the system found that this was a chance for them to gain even more benefits. It would also soothe their ego that all they needed to do to get ahead of talented students is throw some money and leave them behind. Sienna and her friends were no exception to that thought process either. Therefore, they along with almost all the other rich kids who had heard about the fundraiser drive decided to attend it. Edward Jenner was a greedy man. But he had always come through for them. So there was no risk of investing in something dubious either. At least that's what they thought. Ron had come up with both the rumors himself. He had retained anonymity in spreading them too. The first rumor was intended to lure Sienna and her friends to a specified location. The second rumor was to bolster the first one. Ron was not as connected as Sienna. But he too had his source in the academy, which was his maternal uncle, Linkar. He had learned from him that soon a B-rank potion master would be on the grounds of LA as a master professor. Ron molded that information into a rumor to give it a touch of authenticity. This was why the rich kids ended up buying into those rumors. Because just like Ron, they too had their sources in the academy that confirmed the potential existence of a B-rank potion master. Ron knew that the most convincing rumors had bits of truth mixed in them. Hence, he circulated the rumors while hoping that Sienna and her friends Vivi Lauren and Luna Cellini would fall for them. Otherwise, he would have to deal with an unhappy Aaron. And he would want to avoid such Aaron at any cost. Chapter 217, City of Nilami. What is this place? It looks so creepy. Vivi asked Luna and Sienna. The trio along with the other rich kids had gathered at a private property. It was a simple yet large house located at the suburban end of the city of Nilami. The house had a wooden flooring that would produce creaking sounds whenever someone walked over it. The large hall boasted a chandelier at the rooftop that was decorated with spider webs. And one could see that some parts of the house had been gathering dust for a long time. There were signs of recent human activities. But it was obvious that nobody bothered to renovate or clean the house and just used it as a means to conduct their business. That's why Vivi found it uncomfortable to be at the place. There are auction houses for hire in the city. They are maintained by the city administrations. Although maintain won't be the right word to describe what I'm saying, you get the gist. Edward Jenner is going crazy. He is trying to give a professional touch to a deal that should stay under the table. What was he thinking by asking us to come here? Let's just hear what he has to say before getting the hell out of here. Sienna answered in an irritated voice. The city of Nilami was one of the closest cities to the city of Lion Hearts. A cold ride would normally take up to 5 hours to cover the entire distance. The city of Nilami was famous for its auction events. It would act as a host for such events organized by trusted authorities and shady organizations with equal and impartial attitudes. The city would just charge city tax with every transaction that has been made in such events, and rake revenue from it. In exchange for such a partial tax process, the city of Nilami, for the most part, would try to look the other way when it came to buying and selling goods with questionable origins. The house that had been selected for the gathering was often rented for similar events in the past by a lot of out-in-the-open and hidden organizations. So it didn't feel strange that Edward Jenner had selected the same place to summon the LA students with deep pockets under one roof. Another reason Aaron had selected the city of Nilami instead of the city of Lion Hearts was that the latter was under the protection of the academy. The security in the city of Nilami was pretty lax, something he had been seeking for his coming event. Glad to see you all here, dear students. Hope you didn't find it troubling to travel to this beat-down place. Hee. Aaron addressed his fellow LA students with Edward's voice and face. It had been some hours since he had killed the original Edward. And now he was using his identity to execute what he had planned for Sienna and her friends. Eddie, what is the meaning of this? You could have kept this event inside the city of Lion Hearts. I would have arranged a safe place for you if you had just told me. What are we even doing here in the city of Nilami as if you are conducting a professional auction? Sienna voiced her opinion as soon as Edward was done greeting the students. It looked like she was very unhappy with the way her servant-like lab in charge had created discomfort for her. Hee. I'm using this place for another event that will come up as soon as I'm done with you. I'm trying to be cost-effective, you see. I have paid a lot to the city administration to get the assurance I need in conducting my business here. So I'll request your patience. Hee. Edward explained his position, and that convinced a lot of students in the crowd. They didn't mind coming here as long as they could be selected for the Master Rankers classes after all. Sienna still has her complaints. But she kept them to herself for now. It was better she let the event proceed and get away from this place as soon as she could. Her womanly intuition was telling her this place wasn't safe for her. Alright. You guys must have heard about a master-ranked Poti-1er coming to LA for their professorship, yes? Well, this news is true. As far-fetched as you might think, I was the one who had made it happen by giving the master ranker the ingredient they needed. The reason I gathered you guys here was to conduct an auction for the 20 places master ranker is planning to fill with talented students. They are not going to bother to individually test you for your talents. So I will be left in charge of the selection. You know what that means, right? Edwards flashed a cunning smile that the students had expected but never seen on Edward's face before. One of the students couldn't help raising his doubt. Edward, even if we buy those 20 seats, wouldn't it still be dangerous? It is a master ranker after all. What if they get unsatisfied with all our talents and question your claim that we were the cream of the crop in our year? Edward seemed unfazed after hearing the student's question. He nodded at him before replying. It is indeed a valid concern. But I'll not be handing the seats to you without creating a spectacle out of it. I'll introduce a rigged test for these 20 places and give other students the impression that you have been selected through a natural process. As for the master ranker's dissatisfaction, don't worry. Do you think a master ranker keeps track of every generation's talent that comes after them? They'll just think that your generation has regressed in talent and conduct their classes as per your level. So fret not. Everything will be alright as soon as you sign the anonymity contract. Edward handed them the anonymity contracts and asked the students to sign them. Chapter 218, Special Treatment. He gave the reason that since there were 33 of them present here vying for those 20 seats, there were going to be 13 unsatisfied students who might leak what took place at this place to get their revenge. By signing the contracts, every student would be granted anonymity whether they win or lose those seats. This would allow the students to bid for the 20 seats without worrying about revenge from the ones who couldn't secure their place. The students found sense in Edward's statements. This was a master rankers class after all. This was a huge opportunity for them to make contact with the Poti-1ing of that stage and understand its principles. They wouldn't miss such an opportunity by chickening out from the opportunity presented by their inside man in the academy. Edward conducted the auction for seats as soon as the students were done signing the contract. He allowed the students to bid and fight for every seat individually. That meant he had 20 rounds of bid in which the students fought with each other 20 times. In the end, the 20 students who were going to get the seats were selected. The remaining 13 students couldn't do anything but suffer in silence. The ones who had won had paid more price in extals than them after all. They could only blame their unpreparedness for coming here with less dough. But Edward wanted to milk the 13 students too. So he offered them more benefits in the lab activities and took a sizable chunk out of their extals stash in exchange for lofty deals he was never going to fulfill. The 13 students who had lost the bid felt some kind of comfort in the fact that they could get something out of coming here. And most importantly, their image as rich kids with deep pockets was maintained in front of their peers. This was the mental satisfaction they were looking for, which Edward targeted precisely. Alright, kids. Wait for the test event to take place at the academy. Rest of you who got the extra deals from me, it'll take us a few days to work on them. But you should see the power of extals you have used here soon. Till then, goodbye and have a safe journey. Edward gave his closing speech, after which the students started dispersing. Sienna was glad that the bid took place without any hiccups. She cursed her worrisome heart that told her something was wrong. She had won the seat for herself. Vivi and Luna were not as loaded as her. So they required some financial support from Sienna, which the latter gave without minding much. The Slughorns knew how to get the returns on their investments after all. Sienna and her two friends started to leave along with the other students when she heard Edward's voice from behind. Miss Sienna, may I have a word? Oh, you two girls, Vivi and Luna, you can stay too, for I have something important to tell you. Sienna was puzzled by Edward's new offer. She was going to refuse to stay with her any longer. But she heard Edward's hushed voice before she could do that. Miss Sienna, I have a special deal for you. And this would be something exclusive to you, you see. That's why I couldn't bring it up when the other students were around. And your friends Vivi and Luna can stay if it makes you uncomfortable. Sienna was stopped from saying her no out loud by Edward's reasonable explanation. She had paid the guy the most. She thought it was only natural he would give special treatment to her. Plus, she found the mental support she needed to stay behind with Vivi and Luna around. The girls were curious about the deal Edward was going to offer Sienna. They also felt that they owed it to the scion of the Slughorn since she had invested her extals in them. Soon all the students left. And only the three girls and Edward remained at the scene. Well, what is it? Sienna asked impatiently. Edward smiled lightly before saying. Please have some patience, Miss Sienna. We have a few lurkers hiding in the shadows keeping an eye on you. We'll wait for them to leave before we can proceed further. Meanwhile, drink this tea. It would help you calm your nerves. Edward retrieved a teapot and 3 cups from his storage. He offered a teacup to each of the young ladies present there before pouring the tea stored in the teapot. Edward had cast a fire spell on the teapot beforehand. The execution was for a brief period before serving the tea. That warmed the tea just at the right temperature, making it ready to serve. The 3 young ladies didn't know about Edward's elemental affinity beforehand. So they didn't see any problem with it. They drank their teas one sip at a time, gossiping among themselves as they had always done, in this timeline as well as the previous one. The time flew by. The lurkers had already left after finding out Edward and the 3 girls were on guard against them. The young ladies had been talking about some juicy gossip by then, so they didn't mind continuing their talk a bit longer. But soon, without them knowing, the 3 girls became drowsy and were put in a state of forced slumber. Edward smiled after seeing the fruits of his efforts sleeping on the ground. Reen, any news? Edward aka Aaron asked his beast companion. She had been scanning the area with her mana sense under Aaron's command. Nothing suspicious. The lurkers have left for real. There's nobody around except for us and the food, air. I mean these 3 girls. Reen's confirmation soothed Aaron's mind. From his storage, he retrieved a bottle of wine and drank the contents without using a wine glass. Perfect. Aaron commented after taking a few gulps of the wine. It wasn't clear whether he was referring to the taste of the wine or the progress of his plan so far. Chapter 219, Items Auction. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host for the night, Ron Damien. You can call me Ronnie. Pleased to meet you. These are my associates, Mr. R and Mr. D. The young lady you met before me is my guardian angel Elena. Yes, she is a seer ranker. Ron Damien aka Ronnie aka Aaron was seen standing on an aptly placed podium. It had been some time since the students of LA had left the old house they considered as creepy and haunted. Now it was occupied again by a bunch of shady people that exuded the vibe that they were either bloodthirsty criminals or used to hiding in the shadows. The entire environment, therefore, had a sort of macabre feel to it. And the fact that the people present as well as the host of the event, his guardian, and 2 associates were wearing face masks added to its visual effect. Ronnie was unfazed by the presence of the dangerous-looking audience he had summoned through Ron's shady contacts. This was because he had Reen standing behind him acting as Elena. She was acting as his guardian and served as the much-needed deterrent for the auction. Mr. R and Mr. D were Ron and Dino respectively. Aaron told them to come to the place, telling them to follow Ron Damien's orders. Aaron wasn't comfortable with sharing the identity of his alias with his slaves. Nor did he want to make his shape-shifting power known to anybody. The cynic him thought it would be better if Ronnie was introduced as the new guy under his control. Ron and Dino thought that it was a strange coincidence that the guy they were supposed to follow a few orders of had a name that kinda sounded like their first names mashed together. What they didn't know was that their names also had a hand to play in setting the name of his alias. Aaron had to admit Ron had done a fabulous job in getting things done in the best way possible. Without Aaron getting his hands directly involved. He felt like enslaving him and not killing him was worth it. At least till now. Ronnie carried his opening speech further. The rules of this private auction are extremely simple. The increase in bidding value should be at least 10% of the item's original price. For example, if you have an item with the initial bidding amount of 1,000 extals, you can increase the bid by adding 100 into the original amount. The increase in bidding value that is less than 100 extals will not be accepted. But you can increase the bid with the amounts ranging from 200, 300, 400, and likewise in extals. I hope everyone understands the rules so far. Ronnie looked at the audience to confirm they understood what he had said now. Their silence meant their agreement. So he explained some more. The bidding will continue unless there's nobody to up the bidding value. Buyers can claim the item that they've successfully bid for right on the spot, delivered to you at your table by my associates. But the delivery will be done after you have paid the bidding amount in full. Please ensure that you have the money you bid for. Otherwise, Miss Guardian Angel that you met before me will have to re-educate you in your ranking ways and lifestyle. Hee hee. Aaron didn't forget to use Reen's presence as a threat to intimidate his audience a little. Upon his command, Reen released a bit of her C-rank mana sense for a fraction of a second. The people who had come here to spoil the private auction and take the loot for themselves aborted their plans after sensing Reen aka Elena's presence as a C-rank warrior. They had understood that a swing of her hand was all it would take to take care of them. For good. They would never wake up from their eternal sleep if Renita decided to end their life. Now that the deterrence has done her job, it was time for Ronnie to start with the actual event. Now that the introductions are over, let's get to this private auction you have come to attend without wasting your time. The first item in this list is an old scroll that has a 5-star wind element spell of the E rank written on it. We all know what a 5-star spell of E rank entails. The bid will start from 2000 XTALs. Please state your bid price fast. Once the 3 hammer hits have been rung and the item is claimed by a certain individual, it will not be brought back in the auction again. Now let the bid begin. 2500 XTALs. 2800 XTALs. 3500 XTALs. The bidding value kept on increasing as more people decided to break their silence and chime in. Aaron had kept the base value of the item low to tempt the buyers. But seeing the trend of bid increment, he knew he would be able to get more out of the useless spell in his possession than if just sold it in the black market. Aaron had a lot of useless items from the cultist hideout. So he decided to auction all the stuff that was of high value yet useless to him because of his unsuitable elemental affinity and current level. Aaron kept on raking XTALs with each item he auctioned off. Each item was useless to him but valuable in the eyes of the people attending the auction. Therefore, in a way, Aaron was making crazy money out of his junk. Aaron had learned long ago that considering things as precious or trash was a personal perspective that was based on the individual's tastes and needs. So he always had it in his mind to do something productive with the items from the cultist hideout that was of no use to him. It took a while before the item auction ended. Aaron had scored an unbelievable amount of XTALs by now. But the auction event wasn't over yet. Aaron still had more things to auction off after all. Chapter 220, Auctioning Off of Experiences. With this last item's successful purchase, the item auction part of the event comes to an end. But this is not the only thing we have in store for you. I'm sure you must have heard the term auctioning off experience. This is Nilami after all, the city of unique auctioning events. I'll explain this to the uninitiated. We are offering to sell you a chance to have an experience that might be unique to you. Every experience we offer will be special. So be sure to bid your price well. Because the segment doesn't have a base price tag on experiences. You need to decide if the experience is worth it to you and set a price. If your price isn't challenged by anybody, that experience will be yours to have. Please also note that the experience types are dictated by us. So they'll have to be felt the same way we want you to feel them. Of course, some liberties are allowed. But changing the core experience program is not. I don't need to repeat twice what would happen to you if you decide to breach these simple rules. You all are wise enough. If you are a faint of the heart, I suggest you leave the auction now, before the auction of experiences begins. Does anybody want to leave? Ronnie asked, knowing that nobody would try to leave the auction. He knew his audience. This was Nilami, the city of private auction events, shady deals, and even shoddier people that seemed to have no bounds when it came to all things related to degeneration. Aaron knew half of his audience would be heretic cultists and half of them would be degenerate rankers. To them, the main event of the auction was starting now. They had attended plenty of such auctions while in the city anyway. Good. Nobody left. Now let's start with the first experience, shall we? Have you ever experienced the face of a ranker who is angry with you with all their blood and soul? Have you ever experienced halting someone's ranking journey forever? This experience pack features a young girl whose mana core is up for your destructive attacks. She is a bright young girl from a well-to-do family. Furthermore, she is regarded as a talented and stunningly beautiful ranker of her generation. So the experience of destroying her mana core will surely be a unique one. I'll present the girl to you so that you can check for yourself and decide the price for this experience pack 01. Mr. D, please bring the girl selected for experience pack 01 and present it to our esteemed customers. Mr. D was a bit hesitant after he heard Ronnie's command. This was a little too messed up for him. Destroying the ranking prowess of your enemy was one thing. Destroying someone's ranking prowess when they had done nothing wrong was another. And yet, Aaron had found another realm in settling his scores. He was trying to make money out of his enemy getting destroyed by him. In short, he wanted to get paid for exacting his revenge. But Dino did not have a choice but to obey. Using his stare, Ron indicated that he should follow the command as well. He entered into a small room and brought out a tight and silent Vivi on his right shoulder. The girl was frightened after seeing the scene in front of her. People were wearing masks and they all exuded vile presences that said they were all degenerates. But she couldn't do anything. The last thing she had remembered before falling into the trap was that she was talking with Luna and Sienna. She could have never imagined that she'd fall into this trap out of nowhere. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the girl for Experience Pack 02. As you can see, she is young and vivacious. She is an F ranker in the initial phase. You can choose your method to destroy her mana core. But you'll only be given up to 5 minutes to do this. Plus, you cannot harm the girl other than her ranking status. After destroying her mana successfully, you will be offered an expansion pack in which you would get to talk to her and hear her curses and screams. The expansion pack would also have a time limit of 5 minutes. The girl would be taken backstage after the experience and expansion packs are over. Bidding for the expansion pack 01 opens now. Begging. Vivi heard what was going to be done to her and she was horrified because of it. She started kicking Dino and thrashing about to get free from her degenerate captives. But it was of no avail. Even Dino had thought of releasing Vivi under the pretext of her struggle. But the girl had been drugged and her ranking prowess had been suppressed. Plus, there were so many people in here with a higher ranking status that catching her would only be a matter of a few moments. Thus, her physical struggles or Dino's mental struggles were in vain. 5,000 XDollars. Hee hee. I want to see the look on this lil birdie when she faces the ultimate despair in her life. Everyone, please let me do the honors. One muscular masked man stood up and curtsied everyone before stating his bid. It was obvious from his body, posture, and voice that he was a middle-aged man. But the mask made it difficult for people to see it. Audience members had already been warned against using their mana sense in the area to observe those under their masks. This was considered as a breach of privacy and the only punishment for that was death by Elena aka Reen's hands. The perpetrator had to find solace in the fact that their death would be quick and painless. The middle-aged man thought he won the bid. But his bid amount was soon surpassed by a sweet female voice. 8,000 XDollars. I practice a ranking technique that lets me use young girls' mana cores to progress in my ranking journey. It even makes my skin more smooth, and supplier. This young girl is an ideal candidate for me. How can I allow anyone else to have her? Win your bid by raising your bidding amount, mister. Not your voice. Hee hee. Chapter 221, Unique Experience Pack. Win your bid by raising your bidding amount, mister. Not your voice. Hee hee. The lady with the sweet voice berated the middle-aged man. And yet the man didn't find it in him to get angry with her. This was because her voice felt enchanting to anyone who had heard it. The middle-aged man tried to raise the bidding amount. But every time he did that, it would be topped by the lady's newly raised amount. The middle-aged man smiled mirthlessly after realizing that the lady wasn't about to back down no matter what he did. So he gave up on the Experience Pack 01 and sat down by the table assigned to him. The lady with the sweet voice won Experience Pack 01 in the end. She approached the girl still being carried by Dino on his shoulder. The guy saw that the lady was approaching them with a fervent look in her eyes and lowered Vivi down. The girl tried to break free again. But with her drugged status and Dino's strong grip, she couldn't dodge the grim fate Aaron had bestowed upon her. Ronnie. My ranking technique requires me to follow a certain procedure, you see. So I'll need a separate room to do stuff with my experience pack. Don't worry though, the experience pack will not be altered much. Will it be okay now to give me some personal space with my pack? The lady asked Ronnie. To which he replied affirmatively. But of course, Miss Customer Satisfaction is paramount to us. You will be taken to a separate room along with your experience pack. The expansion is included in the bid amount. So feel free to hear her cries. But no information sharing is allowed. My guardian angel will keep an eye on you through her mana sense to ensure the experience pack stays intact after you are done with it. I hope you don't mind. Aaron said and gave a courtesy bow to his lady customer. He had a taller, more muscular visual profile when he was Ron Damien. So his bow didn't look as elegant. Sure. I don't mind. Mr. D, lead the way. Dino sighed and led the lady to a room while dragging Vivi. Aaron didn't wait for Experience Pack 01 to be over. He started the bid for the next Experience Pack. Experience Pack 02 contained Luna. The conditions were mostly the same as the previous pack. But instead of the mana core, the pack dictated that Luna's mana circuits be harmed. The expansion pack allows the buyer to break off Luna's limbs and flay the skin of both her arms. This time the expansion pack was won by the middle-aged man. He thought this pack was more suitable for him than the previous one. So he was glad he could save his money for the pack he needed the most. The guy didn't need a separate room. He started indulging in his experience pack right then and there. Luna cried and screamed. But to the guy who was inflicting pain, her cries sounded like the sweetest melody he had heard in a while. Soon the experience packs 01 and 02 were over with. Mr. R and Mr. D took the now unconscious, ranking status-wise wasted girls inside. Other normal rankers might think Aaron was cruel with his revenge even if they learn about his circumstances. But in his head, the butcher thought he dealt lighter punishments to the two girls who had a hand to play in his downfall in his previous life. Through the experience packs, Aaron had controlled the severity of the girls' suffering. As a consequence, only their ranking statuses were lost, aside from a bit of bodily harm. Having trauma was also the other type of suffering that wouldn't be visible. But Aaron couldn't care less about the girls' trauma. His whole previous life had been marked by the trauma Sienna and her friends inflicted on him. So it was only natural they would have a trauma of their own as repentance, as far as Aaron's revenge was concerned. It might seem that Aaron had gone much softer with Ron and Dino. Aaron, however, thought the exact opposite. These guys were the pawns he could easily dispose of. Instead of a one-time event, Ron and Dino's sufferings were going to be episodic. The main event of the second half of the auction was saved for the very end. It was now Sienna's turn to get sold off as an experience pack. Ladies and gentlemen, this experience pack is truly unique. Not because of its contents, but also because of the subject included in the experience pack. This featured girl is also a talented ranker of her generation. Her beauty knows no bounds. She has jet black hair and crimson eyes. Her oval face spells perfection. Her smooth and clear skin is so sensitive that it turns pink as soon as you touch it even lightly. She is a fine specimen of how a ranker could be the epitome of excellence in every field one could think of. This experience pack features this special young lady, making it even more special than previously two packs combined. Furthermore, she is a famous personality in the ranking community. I will not reveal her name or her origin to keep the excitement factor of the experience pack intact. But in the coming days, you will be shocked to know the identity of the person. So when that day comes, you will regret that you didn't get the experience pack should you choose to hesitate to buy it today. The speciality of this experience pack does not stop there, however. For this pack, we are going to have multiple participants. 10 to be precise. That means each place will have its bid and we will select 10 people from you guys to unlock this experience pack. What can you expect, you might ask? Well, let me tell you, for this pack, we want an explosion of carnal desires. Each of the 10 people takes turns sexually pleasing themselves along with the subject in question. Everything sexual in nature is allowed as long as the subject doesn't die from it. The experience pack will provide you with some personal carnal time with the subject through bidding. So the first place bid winner will get to enjoy the subject for the first time all by themselves. This up and close personal proximity is only for a limited amount of time. The experience pack will continue until the 10th place holder is satisfied. The requirement here is that you have to keep the subject active at all times in your adventures. The experience pack will last for 3 hours. Fret not. All of you and the subject will be given the recovery potions. These potions would allow you to deliver your full potential while enabling the subject to last all 3 hours. In the expansion pack, you will again be provided with some carnal time with the subject. But this time, all 10 people will be summoned at once. I hope you know what that entails. Isn't this experience pack 03 very exciting? It is open for auction now. Let the bid begin. Aaron said out loud in Ronnie's voice. One could hear and feel a tinge of excitement in that speech somewhere. Chapter 222, Consumer Culture. In the expansion pack, you will again be provided with some carnal time with the subject. But this time, all 10 people will be summoned at once. I hope you know what that entails. Let the bid for first place begin. Aaron said out loud in Ronnie's voice. One could hear and feel a tinge of excitement in that speech somewhere. 10,000 XDALs. 12,000 XDALs. The bidding value of first place began to escalate quickly. Aaron couldn't help feeling a tinge of excitement as he conducted the auction. You like framing guys for rapes, right? Now you can legitimately make that claim against 10 of your bidders. Aaron thought to himself. He felt that most of his grievances from the past timeline had been alleviated considerably. He did think of fucking Sienna up pretty well. But every time he saw her, he would feel an almost uncontrollable desire to cut her into 1,000 pieces. Aaron's hate for Sienna was too strong for him to even think of doing the deed she had accused him of doing. Her visage would send his blood rushing to his brain instead of towards his groin. That was because he couldn't find it in him to see her as a woman. The bidding price for the first place was the highest. Then it slowly depreciated with each passing place. But Aaron didn't mind. He was just happy raking XDALs while having his vengeance. Aaron did not simply drug Sienna to make her unable to exert her ranking power. He had also administered her with a hallucinogenic that would induce panic attacks. Jake's father Jack brought him the potion, which Agatha delivered to him a few days before the plan started. Aaron didn't administer Sienna with an aphrodisiac because he didn't want her to feel joy while she was being devoured by those 10 degenerate rankers. He wanted the experience to make a deeper mark on her psyche, just like the recluse rapist incident had happened to him. The panic-inducing hallucinogenic potion he had administered to the scion of Slughorn would keep her senses intact for the most part. She would be aware of what was happening with her and around her. However, the potion caused her to see things exaggeratedly, triggering her sense of fear and alarm. What is this? Ah. Why are there monsters surrounding me? Help, help. Ken, help me, these monsters would kill me. Help, someone, anyone. The experience pack 03 was unveiled in front of everyone. Sienna was pinned to the ground by the same middle-aged man who had won first place in the bidding. He beat her up a bit and made her scream before he could get on with the deed. Her scream was what gave him the hard-on in the first place. 9 degenerate rankers surrounded the duo, waiting patiently for their turn. There were 7 men and 3 women who had won the bid for experience pack 03. The lady with the sweet voice who had won the first experience pack was also among them. But she was a little disappointed because this was not how she wanted to enjoy her pack. The lady was also thinking that she had seen the girl somewhere or read an article or two with her image. But she wasn't sure. Erin had already declared that the experience pack 03 would be special. As a result, she just assumed Sienna must be a rising star of her generation in Edinburgh. Sienna kept screaming as she felt she was getting raped by devils from hell and beyond. The emotional impact of being defiled was getting heightened even further by the hallucinogenic potion Erin had administered her. The first place bidder was soon done with his deed. Sienna was given a vial of recovery potion by Erin to keep her in her sense. Sienna was energized by the recovery potion as soon as Ron forcefully made her drink it. As a result, her suffering resumed and intensified even further with each passing bid winner. Soon all the placeholders had their turns. Everyone took a breather to cool off and talk to each other while smiling. Erin served the participants snacks and drinks to please them even further. To Erin, every participant who paid him extals was his valued customer. He didn't even glance at the freeloaders, much less offer them snacks or beverages. If he had his way, Erin would just put the freeloaders through the same form of torture as the one Sienna was facing. He would also curse their 7 generations for wasting his time and resources. Scrooge in him was a staunch supporter of consumer culture after all. Now that the default experience pack 03 was over, it was time for the promised expansion pack. The participants were energized and the subject was terrified. That was because she was seeing the devils eyeing her with their piercing gazes that spoke volumes about their hunger for more. Sienna felt like dying was a better option than feeling the things she was feeling. She wanted to kill herself, but the participants surrounding her would make sure that nothing of that sort happens. They had paid a hefty amount to the wretched auction organizer. Now they needed their money's worth. Sienna would have settled for staying unconscious throughout the whole event. But Erin had made sure that every bit of pain and agony she feels by getting violated is etched onto her very soul. The expansion pack unfolded just the way Erin wanted it to. He had already arranged a couple of refreshing rooms along with a few sets of basic amenities so that participants could clean themselves up. Sienna was still awake. But she was now an empty husk of her former self. The formerly arrogant to the bones girl didn't even speak or cry anymore. Her tears had run dry. Now she was looking blankly into the void as if wondering what had gone wrong in her life. Chapter 223, The Slughorn Scandal. Erin didn't forget to place a visual capture artifact that'd record the whole event in a 3D spectral format. It wasn't that he only wanted to look at his revenge fulfillment trophy. It was only a part of the reason. Erin was going to make multiple copies of the recording and sell them to the rest of the audience who couldn't participate in the event. He had already announced that the buyers would get to buy the recordings at a reasonable fixed price this time, sans the bidding format. This wasn't because Erin was satisfied with the amount of extals he made. Scrooge felt all the money he had collected so far was still not as much as he would like to be under his control. However, he had another reason for spreading the visual content of this act. He wanted to sully the Slughorn name and damage its reputation. And what better way to do it than sell it to the degenerate rankers who would spread the captured content like an unstoppable wildfire. Erin didn't just want to kill or put Sienna through a tough time as a form of his revenge. He wanted the entire Slughorn household to pay for the hell he had been forced to endure in the past timeline. The Slughorns needed to be brought down from their high pedestal. And publicizing this act was the beginning of that plan. Erin wanted to create a potion industry that would rise within the Edinburgh Kingdom. But the potion market had been extremely saturated because of the big players like the Slughorns that had hogged the majority of sales and distribution chains. If the foundation of the Slughorns were to be shaken, the house would face some loss on the market. And that would allow small-time potion like him to breathe a bit easier. Erin had been coordinating with Jack for this very reason. Unlike the previous timeline in which he was prevented from making a living as a potion master, Erin wanted to dominate the kingdom's market one day with his potions and make a killing out of it. Erin knew that this ill publicity would not be enough to cause a huge loss in the market for the Slughorns. But it was a start. And this was just a bonus he had planned. The main price was the scar he'd leave on Sienna's conscience. Soon the expansion pack was also over. And the participants were made to stop the act, lest Sienna becomes too much of a dead fish. It would defeat the purpose of torture if the subject stopped feeling pain. Erin then handed the copied recordings, which were pebbles with runic inscriptions. These were all F-rank artifacts of the 3-star grade. Aaron had already included the amount he had to put in buying the artifacts when he sold the recordings to his bidding audience. So he wasn't at a loss. Aaron knew nobody would recognize Sienna that easily. And he had made sure to keep her identity under wraps, lest the participants get chicken feet and run away from the bidding venue. The butcher knew nobody would even dare to touch Sienna had they known who they were literally fucking with. This is why he gave her hallucinogens so that her thoughts would become too distorted for her to identify herself. And instead of keeping things completely wrapped, he just revealed enough information to make more bucks out of it. Aaron knew Sienna's recording would get so famous that it would be analyzed repetitively by a lot of experts. The participants who had won the bid and actively ravaged Sienna up ran the risk of getting their identity exposed even when they wore masks. If that happened, the Slughorn household would make sure that all the degenerate rankers who had taken part in the event would pay with their lives and more. They would do this by actively hunting them throughout the kingdom. Aaron knew that 2 more people would also get hunted apart from the degenerate rankers. They were Edward Jenner and Ron Damien aka Ronnie. He had already taken care of Edward by killing him off first. So that was an almost dead end. And he was going to burn his Ron Damien identity after this event. The Slughorns weren't the only people Aaron had to worry about. He knew he would be equally hated by the degenerate participants for painting targets on their backs. While being hunted by the Slughorns, they would try to hunt him with all their might. So Ron Damien had to disappear the way Edward Jenner had been. Aaron sold all the recordings and bid farewell to his audience. Then he called Ron and Dino up and ordered them to do another of his bidding. Sell the remaining recordings on the black market. Make sure you sell it under the tag of Slughorn Scandal to make the buyers aware of what they were buying. Don't use your regular contacts while selling the recordings in bulk and make sure you stay anonymous. This would be a one-time transaction. So try to get the most out of the deal. You'd get a 30% cut from this. Aaron handed Ron the recordings in a storage device and instructed him to proliferate the recordings to blow the Slughorn Scandal out of proportion. This was a countermeasure if the degenerate rankers somehow came to know about the real identity of the subject and decided to sit on their recordings. Ron didn't want a 30% cut from the deal he knew to be too risky to continue. But he also knew that vile creatures like Aaron and Ronnie shouldn't be provoked. Especially when he was enslaved to them. So he sighed and nodded his head. Aaron also told the Berserker boys that had turned into his goons to take Sienna, Luna, and Vivi from this site and drop them somewhere safer. The butcher wanted the ladies alive so that they could feel the agonies exacted on them by relieving them every time they closed their eyes. Aaron told Reen to destroy the entire house with her lightning element AoE she had copied from him. He didn't want a refund of his booking amount from the city administration anyway. Reen's mana signature was convoluted. It would make it near impossible for any investigation team to use any historian or tracking related spells at the site. Eventually, because of Reen's spell, the rankers nearby would come to check out the place. So he left the place with Reen as soon as she was done executing her spell. The Slughorn Scandal would become even more famous than the recluse rapist incident. Hee. Aaron thought amusedly to himself as he traveled further away from another of his crime scenes. Chapter 224, Rising Hunger. A few days after the Slughorn Scandal, Aaron could be seen practicing his ranking technique late at night inside his dorm room. He had assumed a meditative position with his eyes closed, tongues of lightning dancing over his skin. Aaron could feel that the technique he had been using was making him feel that it had become slightly incompatible with him. It did make him progress in his ranking journey. But he was starting to have a hard time following the steps mentioned in the technique. Sometimes the mana points that the technique wanted him to activate would remain dormant. And other times, the mana would circulate faster than he needed to through his mana circuits, forcing him to start the sequence all over again. And despite the slight incompatibility, his ranking journey had gotten fast-paced instead of slowing down. Tonight was no different either. Before his transformation, Aaron needed to spend at least 3 to 4 hours every night practicing the technique perfectly. But post his transformation, he could be done with his ranking technique in an hour despite having to restart a few times. Aaron had first thought that the technique itself has a problem once the practitioner reaches closer to the upper stage of the F rank. It was known by rankers that a few techniques would speed up or slow down at a particular stage within the rank because of their peculiarity in channeling the mana through your body and strengthening the mana core. So the butcher drawing that conclusion wasn't surprising. Aaron hadn't practiced a 5-star ranking technique in his previous life after all. He didn't know what to expect. He never really linked the peculiar state he experienced while practicing his running technique to his transformation at first. But reading J.J. Edgar's journal opened Aaron's eyes to the truth that was in front of him. Indra's Levin was meant to be practiced by pure humans. And he had ceased to be one when he transformed. Edgar's journal had hypothesized that the demi-humans would not be able to practice ranking techniques. At least not completely. Or the way they should be practiced. This was based on the fact that a human's position of mana points and mana circuits would be different from that of the demi-humans, because of the difference in their constitutions. Aaron connected the dots and realized that something similar was happening to him. And yet when Edgar's journal hypothesized that the techniques would be incompatible, it only created a slight discomfort for him. As if his body could deal with the incompatibility or mold itself up subconsciously to adapt to the technique. Indra's Levin was completed just fine. And Aaron was about to get up. But before he could do that, the mana started to circulate inside his body on its own and started activating the mana points on its own. This was as if the mana had a mind of its own. Aaron decided to cancel the plan of halting his technique and observed what was happening inside his body with keen eyes. Aaron could feel that whatever was happening to him right now was not detrimental. He could feel that the autonomous circulation of mana was even better at nourishing his body and mana core than the current ranking technique he was practicing. Minutes soon turned into hours. Aaron had changed from technique-guided mana circulation to an autonomous one when it was over. He was hoping he could taste the incredibility of that small miracle once more. But alas, it turned out that he was being too greedy. Autonomous circulation did not take place. I have changed. Yet I feel like I haven't. Aaron sighed and recalled only his body stats on screen. HP 4.8/4.8. MP 5.7/5.7. STR 4.0. AGI 5.0. Int 3.6. BTP 23. Damn. My BTP rose again. Aaron exclaimed to himself after seeing the autonomous mana circulation had shot up his BTP value. Now he just needed a little push to enter the upper stage of the F rank. This is way too fast even if I consider that the technique is 5-star grade and I practice it diligently. It all must be due to my tra. Aaron's chain of thoughts was cut by the extreme hunger he felt right afterwards. He felt like he could eat the food ordered for all his teammates all by himself if it was presented to him right now. What is this? What is happening to me? Aaron asked himself as he caressed his stomach with his right hand to calm it down. He had never experienced his tummy making growling noises before. Aaron had eaten moderately all the time, this and in the previous timeline. He had never overindulged when it came to food. That was because he ate for sustenance. And his sustenance would be ensured after he had just the right amount of meals every few hours. But the feeling of strong hunger Aaron was feeling now had almost overwhelmed all his thoughts. It was to the point that he could now eat raw meat if it was offered to him. The butcher immediately retrieved all the staple ration he had in his storage and started eating them. But his demon beast was one step ahead of him. She had separated herself from Aaron to let him practice his ranking technique without any disturbance. And she felt his extreme emotions of hunger as soon as he got out of the practice session. Reen always had a stash of food with her when she used to feel hungry. And since she didn't have the abundance of stashed human nuggets in her storage all the time, the demon beast had opted to store good human food of every kind she had found interesting. She immediately retrieved some high-quality beef steaks that had been grilled to medium rare and offered them to Aaron. The latter stopped eating dry food after he saw that his demon beast had produced a heavenly treat for him. He wiped away the dripping saliva from his mouth and started devouring the steaks as he had never had them ever in his life. See, Ernie. Didn't I tell you before? Always stock up on good food. Reen said smiling and started having a piece of steaks too. The duo then had the steaks in silence, enjoying every moment of it. Chapter 225, White Raven Shop. BRRRRRRRRRGH. Aaron produced a loud burp after eating his fourth steak. He felt full and content now that he had ample food in his stomach. He could think again. What was that? Fuck. I thought I was going to die from not eating. Aaron asked out loud to no one in particular. But Reen was there to answer him. Isn't it normal to feel hungry when you don't have food for a few hours? I find it strange that you ate so little before. This is the way we should eat, Ernie. There's nothing wrong with this. Reen told her master to make him feel comfortable. The latter smiled and patted her head before speaking to himself. Edgar's journal doesn't mention anything like this from what I've read so far. Aaron thought before shaking his head. J.J. Edgar was swinging in the dark when he wrote that journal. He couldn't possibly know the extent of effects one would feel or experience after being turned into a demi-human. Aaron had realized that this was Reen's trait that had been passed down to him ever since his transformation. Only now did he truly understand what Reen was used to feeling now and then when she was hungry. This kind of hunger would have driven him mad if he hadn't had his extended life experiences to keep him sane. No use thinking about it now. Anyway, hunger can be managed by simply eating enough food. It's not the most troubling side effect of my transformational change anyway. Aaron decided to deal with one problem at a time. He already had a lot of fish to fry these days. He couldn't waste his time pondering over the fact that he would have bouts of hunger pangs from now on. Aaron, is that you? How did you progress so much in such a short time? Agatha asked her master as soon as she saw him. Agatha was staying in Jack's shop, where they were meeting. Aaron hadn't hidden his mana signature. So she could see a distinct difference. The latter just shrugged his shoulders before replying. Money and potions are enough to make miracles happen. Anyway, did you do what I had asked you to do? This guy never shows all his cards even to his allies. His opponents would die in suspense. Agatha thought and sighed after realizing what kind of a person her master was. She then nodded at him before answering. I purchased a 2-story building near Jake's shop with the money that you gave me. He helped us a lot with that. We utilized all of his channels and contacts to get the property confirmed. I bought the property in your name. You just need to attest the document with your Mana signature. Agatha had chosen a shop that was situated in a prominent location within the city of Lion Hearts. The infrastructure of the shop was simple, elegant, and spacious. It had all the basic amenities and facilities. Furthermore, the shop also featured an ample-sized underground room that was suitable for Aaron's potioning experiments and productions, should he choose to perform them here. This was one of the must-have requirements Aaron had set for the shop when he had tasked Agatha. Needless to say, she did everything by the book and got him his first store. The shop was meant to be used for Aaron's potions that he would be selling over the counter. The Anthropy was ordered to buy a place near Jake's shop so that the potions import and export would become easier. Aaron also had plans to buy a shop in the city of Laurel. It was blessed with an abundance of potion-related ingredients due to its herbs market after all. Agatha was supposed to go there once Aaron had enough funds to make that happen. Aaron was getting poorer by the day even when he was raking Ixtals in abundance. But that didn't stop him from investing. He knew these investments were the gifts that would keep on giving once they've been set in place. But that did make Aaron more desperate for money. Even his pool of auction money was going to get dried up soon if and when he starts his business and tries to expand. He knew it was going to be a while before he started seeing profits. Agatha handed Aaron a scroll that had an array seal placed at its bottom. He read the document carefully before imbuing the contract with his mana. The array seal reacted as soon as it came in contact with Aaron's mana. The seal changed itself and now had an intricate runic pattern. Aaron handed the document to Marla for further processing. She only needed to ask one thing from him. Congratulations, Master. You are now a proud owner of a 2-story shop in the city of Lion Hearts. Now you only need to come up with a name I can register the shop with. Aaron raised his eyebrows after he heard Agatha struggle with calling him a master. He replied nonchalantly. No need to call me master if you don't feel comfortable with it. It sounds cliched anyway. Just call me Aaron. About the shop's name. I don't want things to be too complicated. Let's stick with White Raven. Aaron replied and started walking towards the exit. Agatha cursed herself for calling Aaron master. She didn't want to. But something had come over her and subconsciously affected her. When Aaron came in contact with her, Agatha thought that her status as an anthrope was insignificant in front of him. The pseudo-mutagen elements coursing through her veins were feeling the inherent suppression of the higher being. And that suppression was manifesting itself in her calling him master. Aaron thought of something before completely disappearing from Agatha's vision and turned back before saying, Agatha, make sure that you finalize the procedure as soon as you can. Soon there will be a shitload of political storms happening all around us. We don't want to delay our plans by getting caught in them. And you can start living inside the White Raven shop once the procedure has been completed. The top floor will be yours. I'll be leaving now. See you soon. Chapter 226, Marie. You can start living inside the White Raven shop once the procedure has been completed. The top floor will be yours. I'll be leaving now. See you soon. Agatha was left to her own devices by Aaron after he gave her permission. The latter didn't know what he was talking about. But she was sure about one thing. Her master had his fingers dipped in a lot of pies. Aaron met Jacka next and talked about some finer details about his next set of plans. The latter was happy to coordinate with him. Because by now he had realized that Aaron was going to be an exceptional potion master of his generation. It was always better to form cordial relationships now that he was still growing both as a person and as a businessman. Morning, Teacher Levine. Congratulations on gaining your regressed ranking status back. And I might add that you look more stunning than before. Aaron greeted his teacher before congratulating her for regaining her ranking prowess as a master ranker. The latter hadn't released any of her powers. There was no sign of her mana signature or mana sense. But Aaron could feel that his teacher had gotten more mysterious than before. And he could subtly perceive a faint threat coming from her even when she did not do anything. This was akin to a beast-like perception that mana beasts were blessed with. For example, a wolf will never try to challenge the territory of a lion just because it was lying dormant. Levin's physical features didn't change much. But now she had a youthful vibe about her. Her skin had regained its lost sheen and shade, looking healthy pink. Her dull hair had regained its shine. And her ample bosoms looked firmer than before. Aaron could see that the Master Poti Wonder had gotten her youth back while extending her already long lifespan. Plus, he knew that this must have been just the beginning of her recovery period. By practicing her original B rank ranking technique, Levine would turn the clock back on her bodily age. Levine smiled graciously after hearing Aaron's comment before replying. Morning, Aaron. I would have called you out for your glib tongue if it hadn't been the fact that you have praised my looks even when I had regressed into a D rank. As if you knew I was going to get my rank status back. Good. I have re-entered B rank. But I'm still quite a bit away from resuming where I had been forced to leave off. Sigh. Good things take time, so I won't complain. Anyway, are you ready for your lessons? I have so many things to talk to you about. And frankly so short of time. I might have to wrap things up with a few basic points and then give myself enough time to come back to my previous status. Aaron nodded before replying with a solemn tone. Of course, teacher. Your ranking journey should be of paramount importance to you. And as your disciple, I'd want you to be at your peak. I'm fine with my basics getting covered for now. That'll also serve as a test for you to decide how much you can teach me at my level. Indeed, Aaron. I'm glad that you understand potion making is not as easy as it seems. By the way, you are apprenticed under that last Marla, right? Aaron was confused before nodding at Levin's question. Yes. You don't have to worry about my apprenticeship schedule with Adept Marla. I'll take care of adjusting my routine as per your lectures. Levine shook her head before explaining what she was trying to ask. I didn't ask because of your schedule. I was wondering to ask how Marla reacted when she found out that you had been accepted as my disciple. Aaron got even more confused about Levin's line of questioning now. But he answered everything truthfully anyway. Well, she seemed shocked but didn't say anything after that. For some reason, she also knew that you were looking for Malva Hibiscus. You know each other personally. Levine smiled lightly. She closed the book she was reading and placed it on her desk. Then she poured a tea for herself while replying. I can imagine there was a bit of anger mixed with the shock as well. I don't know her as much as her sister. Marie was or is Marla's elder sister. She served as my apprentice for a while. Marie wanted to become my disciple. But I had rejected her after seeing her talent. It was better than the average. But it was not enough to make me take her as my disciple. I had heard Marie had defected and became a cultist later down the line. But I had lost contact with her long before that. So listening to you being taken as my disciple must not have been a pleasant thing to hear for Marla. I have met with her. She doesn't say it out loud. But she must think that Marie's defection could have been avoided had I taken her as my disciple. Only now did the realization dawn on Aaron. He remembered Marla sympathizing with Rainer after he was done torturing him. And he also remembered how Marla had addressed Levine as an old vixen when he had first mentioned the master potioneer's name to the close combat expert. Aaron's line of thoughts was broken by Marla's next words. You seem to be in your thoughts. Don't worry. I don't hold anything against Marie or Marla. Those two sisters were always close to each other. So I can understand my rejection would have put Marla in a foul mood as well. I remember that last Marla had an unhealthy obsession for elven ales. And it only worsened when she learned about her sister. Does she still get hammered on those ales? Aaron could only smile mirthlessly after affirming Levin's guess. As it appeared, Marla had the same idea of drowning her sorrows in her drinks. Marla of now and Aaron of the past both were trying to find a cure in booze when it didn't solve anything in reality. But that realization has never been enough to stop the heavy drinkers anyway. Chapter 227, White Raven Ale. I'll give you a stock of my elven ales. Instead of a debuff, this elven ale carries a buff that can nourish her constitution. Give Marla a bottle of my stock. Sigh. That lass can't be cured of her addiction anymore. We can at least try to channel it differently. Levine retrieved 2 bottles of elven tales from her storage space and handed them to Aaron. It was clear that the other bottle was for him to relish in. Aaron wasn't interested in the intoxicating effects of the ale. But he wanted to try the effects of the buffs the drink can grant him. Teacher Levine, you keep calling Adept Marla as lass and she is old. How old does that make you? Aaron asked without thinking after he retrieved those bottles and immediately regretted it. That was because it seemed that the atmosphere around him suddenly started turning colder. Damn it! I should never ask these old female rankers about their age. Right after, Aaron praised Levin's beauty with a glib tongue. Even with his skill with words, it took him a while to pacify the master potioner. He tried changing the subject with another question just to be safe. Teacher, are there elven ales with buffs as well? Why are they not known or get sold at liquor shops then? Levine narrowed her eyes on her disciple as if she was still pondering if she should forgive him or not. She knew he had brought up the question to change the subject. But she answered anyway. Of course. There are a few elven ales that come with their own set of buffs. Some can give you a pleasant high and help you circulate your mana through the mana circuits better, making them sought-after drinks to be had just before you start your daily practice of ranking technique. Some can give temporary buffs that can increase a particular set of your body stats, while the other can help you cast spells better by exciting your mana points. The only drawback of elven ales as compared to the normal potions is the fact that they affect your senses, so they are not ideal for on-field operations. Aaron listened carefully. He had never given a second thought to a relatively expensive yet common beverage within the Edinburgh Kingdom. He had taken it for granted in both his lives. There were so many wondrous places, items, and more in the world of rankers. So something such as elven ales, even with their logic-defying effects, could be referred to as common. At least that's what Aaron had thought. Aaron had intended to ask the questions just to save himself from the heat. But he couldn't help becoming curious about the elven ales as a result of the question he posed and the responses he received. Teacher Levine, how do they make elven ales? Can anyone make them? Levine chuckled lightly by pressing her palm against her mouth before replying. The elven ales are easy to drink if you are someone rich with connection. But they are not easy to make. Why do you think they can only be made by elves? It's not like humans haven't tried to produce ales with the same type of buffs or debuffs. And some came close. However, they remained nothing more than cheap imitations. The elf potioners guard the recipes of their elven ales with their lives and only pass them down within their families or other elves. It is almost impossible for us to get the recipes from them. Well, some humans did succeed in illegally obtaining the elven ale recipes. But then they would just mysteriously disappear somewhere. We can conclude what must have happened to them and who was behind them. Aaron raised his eyebrows after he heard more information about the peculiarity of 11 ales. Levin's answers had birthed more questions for him. Why do human poti-oneers can't produce or completely imitate a poti-onering product no matter how fancy it may seem? Or come up with our versions of the ales? Do we lack talent in our field than the Fae runs? Levine shook her head after hearing Aaron's question. She drank a sip from her poured tea and explained to her disciple. It's the racial difference between us. I hate to admit it, but the field of potioning is dominated by the elves because of their inherently higher proficiency in the way of the elements. It's not a concept you could understand even when I explain it to you. It's something you feel personally. Only that can make you understand the way of the elements. The recipe is only one part of it. The concoction of elven ales is heavily dependent on the potioneer's understanding of the way of the elements. Since elves are better than us in that ranking field, our concoction stays as a poor counterfeit while theirs become a sought-after drink throughout the kingdom. Aaron pondered over everything that was explained to him by Levine while caressing his chin. He suddenly remembered that he wasn't a complete human anymore. Considering his newly acquired status as a non-human, he wondered whether this would facilitate his progress in the way of the elements. And if that in turn could allow him to concoct potions and ales that weren't normally possible for humans. Can I succeed in making my variant of an 11 ale? Aaron had this thought and it started to take root in his mind. If he could make his version of elven ale, the elves wouldn't have any bones to pick with him. Additionally, the humans would think that the ale was made by them. As such, they'll at least try to buy the product as an encouragement to him and to show the elves that they weren't lesser than them. What if he could use such a novel ale as his USP for the White Raven shop? If that was possible, it would give him the confidence to create his space in the poti-onering market. Aaron knew this was a long-haul project that couldn't be achieved overnight. He had never studied poti-onering past F rank after all. So he didn't know how to incorporate a potioneer's understanding of the way of the elements into the concoction. Let's cover the basics first before I even think of something grand-scale like this. Aaron resumed his conversation with Levine after he had that thought. This was the time for him to learn a few things about poti-onering from the master poti-onerer. Chapter 228, Bend the Rules. Aaron resumed his conversation with Levine after he had that thought. This was the time for him to learn a few things about poti-onering from the master poti-onerer. Both only had about a week before Levine wrapped up a few things and went into isolation. So Aaron thought of making the best use of his time by halting everything else apart from his daily practice regime and focusing on the poti-onering. He would come to meet Levine every day and she would start teaching him from morning till late evening. The latter was focused on sharing all that she thought Aaron could make use of on his current level. He first asked about all the information Levine had about the elven ales. The latter only knew about some finer details, but she explained to him all that she had on the subject. Then Levine started explaining to her disciple about various things to consider when performing poti-onering at his level. She gave him her take on his way of doing things in processing herbs, purifying ingredients, and the actual concoction process. The master ranker also shared a bunch of her old notes with her disciple, telling him not to share with anybody. He nodded and kept them aside before asking. Teacher, are you going into isolation immediately? Levine massaged her head and made a face that said she was irritated before replying. I want to. But someone has spread the rumors in the academy that I'll be conducting a test to take a few students in as my apprentices. Now LA wants me to conduct a test. They said I can reject everybody if I didn't like any of them. But I have to organize a test event at least. I swear if I find those idiots who think a master ranker is free enough to run behind a bunch of teenagers, I'll skin them alive. Aaron maintained a blank face the whole time after hearing Levin's threat, but his mana signature fluctuated a little. That was enough for Master Ranker to look at him with a questioning guess. Aaron, you know something about the event? Aaron scratched his chin and nodded his head before speaking up. Yes. Kinda. I also had heard about the rumor, so I thought of sending my friend here for a test. Will that be okay? Aaron tried to use the bullshittery on Levine to hide his involvement in the case. It was him and his berserker goons that had spread the rumors to lure Sienna along with all the rich kids. Now that rumor was about to bite him in the arse. Aaron could have 2 more days to learn from Levin if she wasn't influenced by LA to conduct the test. But given the choice, Aaron would still have spread the rumors. It was a crucial step in his plan after all. Now he just needed to deal with the aftermath. That's why he gave off the impression that his subtle mana fluctuation was due to him wanting his friend to get selected. Thankfully, it worked in his favor as Levine seemed to have found an answer to her time-consuming chores. That's fine, Aaron. As my disciple, you can conduct a simple test on my behalf. The qualifiers would be those from my lectures. And select the ones that you want. Just ensure that they are decently talented in order not to make it obvious that the competition was rigged. Hee. Levine didn't care about who was made her apprentice. It was the academy's tradition to send students into apprenticeships. But she didn't care about that tradition. The master ranker had only wanted her lab chores to be done by her apprentices. She didn't assign them any more assignments. So it was a nice gig for Poti 1er students as well. Marie was selected as Levin's apprentice for the same reason. The Poti 1er didn't care much about Marla's sister. This was another subtle difference between rankers and cultists. The cultists knew how to break the rules. But the rankers knew how to bend them to their advantage without breaking them. Levine and Aaron were no different in that regard either. All right, teacher. I'll conduct a test with the help of the lab in charge assigned to you. I'll select my friend Jake as your apprentice. He can maintain your lab and do lab chores for us just fine. If you are all right with it, of course. Hee. Why would I not be? We'll get to discuss some more topics that way in the next 2 days without me spending my time regulating a test that was created based on a false rumor. Aaron spent the next 2 days with Levine, discussing some more potion-related stuff. Levine had provided a lot of study material to him. Now that his brain was loaded with so much relevant information he hadn't heard in the past, he needed to spend a great deal of time practicing the art. Levine went into seclusion off LA grounds after those 2 days were over. She made the arrangements for Aaron to organize a test and select Jake as her apprentice. Aaron wanted Jake with him so that the guy could help him in his Poti 1ing as his go-to henchman. He was going to use Levin's lab in her place. So whenever he was busy in his Poti 1ing session, Sullivan Jr. would be there to support him and his concoction. Aaron was sure Jake would be happy that he was going to get selected as a master ranker's apprentice. His father would feel the same too, thinking that it was all Aaron who must have put forward his son's name. Aaron was happy to give the man that impression even when he did it for his sake. He needed Jack's help for his plans after all. The happier the businessman was, the better it was for him to ask him for favors. Chapter 229, Aftermath of Slughorn Scandal. The Slughorn scandal came out in the open in a few days. Eventually, everybody had come to know that Sienna Slughorn was involved in a grim cultist incident as a victim. There were also some rumors of 2 more LA female students involved, but their names weren't much known or discussed. Because Sienna hogged all their attention. The entire incident was now blamed on Edward Jenner. Rumors about him being involved in cultist activities had already been spread by Aaron's berserker goons. Plus, the way Aaron handled the whole thing while shape-shifting Edward strengthened those rumors even further. The Slughorn household was incensed. It had found Sienna in a poor state just outside the city of Nilami. They tried to suppress the news in the fear of their name getting tarnished. The extensive content Aaron recorded on that day eventually ensured that one of the most prominent business tycoon houses of the kingdom wouldn't be able to keep things under wraps for long. LA had also tried to suppress the incident, lest it gets blamed for neglecting the students' safety. But the captured content started getting circulated within known and hidden ranking communities, and that's when all the hell broke loose. The Slughorn household tried to change the identity of that person captured in the content to someone else. But the various experts in the field came out in secret saying that the content wasn't doctored and it was indeed Sienna. The Slughorn household refused to confirm the mass suspicion, still insisting that it was Sienna's look-alike. However, it also blamed LA for being careless about Vivi and Luna, who until now were hardly known by the masses despite being victims of the same incident. LA had tried to play it cool at first. But after hearing Slughorn House's accusations, it stopped doing it. It came clean with everything that it had found out about the case so far. As per the Academy's investigation, Edward Jenner had defected to the cult while serving as a lab in charge. The Academy apologized for this fact openly and assured the masses that the mistake won't be repeated. But LA didn't stop there. Since it had admitted to Edward being a cultist, it had no qualms about saying what it had found out about him so far. The report concluded that the guy had been receiving bribes from students. LA also stated that Edward Jenner was bribed by Sienna Slughorn to alter her lab tests. She along with Vivi, Luna, and a bunch of other rich students had been gathered by LA's rogue lab in charge to get bribes from them. And all of them had traveled to the city of Nilami voluntarily to participate in that fundraiser. This news sparked a huge storm in the kingdom. The Slughorns regretted blaming everything on LA. But the deed had been done. Slipping back from their stance was not beneficial. Thus, they continued to maintain their facade. This act affected the Slughorns' business heavily. But in their defense, the incident was going to affect their business anyway. They just made it more difficult by trying to pick a bone with LA. Edward Jenner and Ron Damian were declared as the most wanted criminals by the Edinburgh Kingdom. Both were declared to be closely linked with each other, working in the shadows for the Beast Bloods. As a result, Beast Bloods also emerged as one of the most talked about cultist organizations within the kingdom. But Slughorns weren't happy with just that. Both of Aaron's aliases were designated for separate anonymous bounty payouts. The Slughorns had also activated their underground channels to know more about anything related to the two guys, Beast Bloods, and anything linked with the Slughorn scandal. Slughorns eventually started zeroing in on the degenerate participants who had taken part in the incident. The famous Poti Wunning House couldn't officially declare the bounty on these characters as they had decided to stay firm on their stance that the girl in the recorded footage wasn't Sienna. So just like what they did with Edward and Ronnie's cases, they declared big bounties on the degenerates anonymously. The kingdom-spanning manhunts began in every direction. A lot of adventurers' guilds, famous parties, and private mercenaries had been roped in eventually. It became difficult for the degenerate rankers to stay in the shadows and save their hides. They all blamed only one person, Ron Damian aka Ronnie. They used their organizations to start pursuing leads on Ronnie so that they could catch him first before rankers and whip his ass. Ronnie had fucked with both the rankers and the cultists. So his name, appearance, and other subtle details recorded by the eyewitnesses quickly got well known. Being pursued by so many people at once had to produce some results. The masses soon found out that Edward Jenner was seen at Grand Hyatt some days back. He had been a patron of the place for a night and he had shown up here with a girl that had no background. The rankers suspected that the girl was the point of contact between Edward Jenner and Ronnie, which resulted in Reen's Elena-like alias getting known to the public as well. It took only a few days before another news reached people's ears that one of the degenerate rankers who was involved in the Slughorn scandal had been hunted. The unknown bounty hunters had made a blood eagle out of him to make a statement, as suggested by the Slughorns. And this was only the beginning. Soon more of these stories started popping up. The crime rate in the kingdom also increased because rankers started using the Slughorn scandal incident as an excuse to do their dirty work. They would kill the person that they had wanted to kill and blame it on the bounty hunters who were out for the degenerate cultists. The Edinburgh Kingdom observed that the increased crime rate was related to Slughorns blowing things out of proportion. This was due to the crazy money they had started to pump into their underground channels. So it decided to suppress the house by raising taxes on its potion production under some silly economical excuse. As a result, the Slughorns had to increase their prices of potions by a small margin. But it was still enough for people to badmouth the house for its greedy nature despite the problems it was facing. Chapter 230, Bonus Dumbfounded Rudy. Aaron's stunt had damaged the Slughorn house more than he had anticipated. And it was now on the back foot because of the Edinburgh Kingdom standing against it. The house finally understood the message the kingdom wanted to convey with its actions loud and clear. It stopped pouring money into the underground network and decided to wait a while. It was going to be a long while before the dust settled in for the Slughorns. That is if they don't get dragged into another storm by a certain shapeshifter who had screwed them big time. 3 months after the Slughorn scandal. Nothing much had changed since the scandal became general knowledge among the rankers and cultists of the Edinburgh Kingdom. The rankers were still hunting the cultists and the 2 people who were directly involved. The cultists were also hunting those 2 people in secret while staying in the shadows. The 2 sides were again placed in front of each other. And another series of Cold Wars had begun. But since it was a Cold War, it had stopped being apparent. Now both sides fought in the shadows, and their battles took place in the dark. The reason behind this whole incident was now facing another of his inter-year ranking wars. And he didn't seem worried at all. The Slughorn scandal had created a huge sensation in LA too. A lot of rich students had been forced to leave the academy or they had gotten out voluntarily. One could hear all of them cursing only one name under their breaths, Edward Jenner. The guy had not only taken their bribe once or twice. He had also organized a fundraiser event to make them cough up extals for something that he couldn't control at all. Boo Edward didn't stop there. He also got himself involved in cultist activities. And fucked one of the few entities in the kingdom that shouldn't have been fucked. And by doing that, He had also widened their holes because of his association with them. The rich kids and the families behind them were angry at Edward Jenner and all those he had been presumed to be associated with. But since LA had played it safe and came clean in not defending its lab in charge, it was only natural for it to persecute the other students who were involved in the bribery as well. It had started kicking those rich students out of the LA grounds who were involved in the incident out after confirming their involvement. That's why, to save their skin, the other kids had decided to leave the academy themselves to salvage any further losses. LA stopped pursuing the students who had left the premises after their voluntary exit. That's how the entire group of first-year students almost became clean of its parasitic student rancors. The Butcher's Act didn't only cause destruction. It had also brought other lesser privileged students some breathing room now that the game of talent was hard reset again. Aaron didn't care or find pleasure in the fact that some of the hard-working students were low-key celebrating the Slughorn scandal. He hadn't done what he did for them anyway. Aaron and his team were standing in front of their opponents. It was Rudy's wreckers. And no, it wasn't a coincidence. Rudy had used his right to battle pass against Aaron's team to summon it on the battlefield against him and his team. Aaron Idril, long time no see. Did you find joy in beating my team when I was forced to stay out of it? Did you enjoy beating my teammates when they were down? Tell me, Aaron, what are you expecting from this match? Do you have any hidden battle passes that I don't know about? Hee. It was clear that Rudy had been keeping tabs on Aaron and his team. The Butcher was busy in his pioneering sessions. He had focused most of his time on honing his elementary skills. So he had to obviously neglect the ranking matches and the battle points. His ranking in every field dropped. And because he did bare minimum matches with absolutely no surprising moves or stunts, he didn't earn any battle pass. Aaron's teammates had been in the same boat as him. That was because the Butcher had assigned specific goals to work on. They were working almost as hard as he was on their schedule. If Aaron couldn't earn a battle pass during this period, there was no point in talking about his teammates doing something like that. They also did their compulsory matches and became part of the bare minimum gang of students. Rudy's snarky remark was a testament to the fact that he knew that Aaron's team couldn't pull any more magic tricks this time. The guy was waiting for his first-year opponent to admit his wrongdoings because of encroaching despair. But Aaron surprised him yet again. For the worse. What are we expecting? We are expecting to lose this battle, of course. Our chances of success are non-existent without the right battle passes. Why did you ask that though? Do you think we are delusional? Or do you expect us to be some sort of protagonists from cliched novels to make us stand above the rest no matter what? Rudy still had the same smile plastered on him that he had flashed at the start of the conversation. But that smile somehow looked to be in a sorry state because of Aaron's blunt and honest reply. Orton Jr. raised his hand and pointed at Aaron to say something. But he didn't have words to describe what he was feeling. He found joy that the opponent that had shamed him and his team in the last inter-year ranking war in front of his second-year buddies was now admitting openly that he and his team were inferior. But there was no despair or shame in Aaron's voice that he was expecting. It sounded like he was just saying the usual things. Like 2 + 2 = 4. And in this case, it was. But that didn't stop Rudy from being dumbfounded by Aaron's nonchalant expression. Chapter 231, Julie returns. There was no despair or shame in Aaron's voice that Rudy was expecting. It sounded like he was just saying the usual things. Like 2 + 2 = 4. And in this case, it was. Are you serious? Aaron nodded before replying. I am. I would have accepted my loss right now if it was allowed to. Rudy didn't reply after that. For some reason, Aaron's rational words made all the irritation Rudy had accumulated in his heart vanish into thin air. So he sighed and proceeded forward to have his inter-year ranking match. Just as Aaron had said, White Raven had lost against Rudy's wreckers. Aaron and his team had improved tremendously over these 3 months. But without the battle passes, they couldn't fill the gap of power and experience they had with their opponents who were equally hard-working as them if not more. Aaron didn't put much of his efforts into the match either. That's because he wanted to pacify the second-year students with his loss. The Butcher thought one huge win was enough for the time. He didn't mind losing some MERPs in favor of second-year students leaving him alone. He couldn't say he liked losing his MERPs, but he had made peace with it. Guys like you are rare, Aaron Idril. Glad to have met you, even when it was not on the best of terms. Let's grab a few drinks sometime. Rudy brought his hand forward for a handshake with Aaron and the latter accepted his gesture. The former smiled lightly before starting retiring from the battle with his entire team. Aaron, why did you tell us not to give our best efforts in winning the match? We had a fighting chance, you know. Becky complained like always. Aaron smiled like he didn't mean it before replying. No, we didn't. You all are too green to think that you could win against second-year students without the battle passes. I had a fighting chance if I were to fight only 2 of them, excluding Rudy. I could have taken care of them using Renita the way I did last time. Of course, they would have been prepared for my moves, so it would have been a lot more difficult. So I would have been taken out as well as soon as I got rid of their tank and fog element guy. I certainly couldn't have stood a chance against Rudy. Jake heard Aaron's statement and agreed with him fully. But he added his own thoughts as well. I think Aaron didn't want us to conflict with the second year. Sometimes taking a step back can help you go a long way. Aaron looked at Jake and patted his shoulder before commenting. Spoken like a true businessman in the making. I have high hopes for you, Jackie. My White Raven shop isn't going to run by itself. By the way, you guys should worry about the upcoming Bazank missions. I'm sure you must have started attending the live demos already. Everyone affirmed what Aaron was asking them. The Bazank was going to open for most first-year students who had sufficient prowess and battle experience to participate in Bazank missions now. Aaron had been preparing his teammates for these missions for a long while now. The Bazank team missions were lucrative in terms of money and resources. But why were they equally dangerous as well? Most of the first-year parties would have their teammates heavily injured or killed in the Bazank missions. That would result in parties being dispersed and new parties getting formed as a result. The Butcher didn't want to put his efforts into recruiting members he couldn't completely trust because of the danger level of these missions. Neither would he shy away from those missions. That's why he had invested so much time, effort, and resources into his teammates. It was almost time to receive dividends on that investment. But before that, Aaron needed to meet with a certain person using one of his aliases for one last time. That was because he had received an interesting message from that person. You sure took your time getting here, Ronnie. I hope everything's alright. Perhaps you have new followers now? Hee. Julie Eckhart commented right after she saw Ronnie aka Ron Damien come to the place they had met and drunk before. She had used Aaron's anonymous contact method that he had shared with her to contact him. Aaron had decided to burn his Ronnie aliases for good. And he wouldn't have come here even for this bodacious beauty. But the offer she had presented him with was tempting. Ronnie had worn a face mask like every other participant in the auction event. Furthermore, he hadn't been captured by the recording device. So his face was still a mystery. The bounties announced on him only contained him with his mask on. So nobody would have suspected Ronnie to be the same person who was currently one of the most wanted criminals. But Jules was different. Because she had come in contact with him before this kingdom-shaking event took place. Julie had connected the dots between the Ronnie she met and Ron Damien that was currently being talked about throughout the kingdom. That was because of Ronnie's talk with her. Ronnie had said to Julie that he was serving as a middleman between his employer and his customers in the underground market. And Ron Damien in the news was said to have conducted an auction event of a few peculiar ranking items. So Julie contacted Ronnie and asked him to come to meet her. She wanted him to be a part of her organization. An organization with which she couldn't allow her association made public. Just like Aaron, Julie had another facet to her. She was a cultist too. Chapter 232, The Illuminati. Julie had used her channels to see one of the items and found out that they were all from the Beast Blood's hideout. The same hideout that was known within the cultists to be destroyed by the city of Silvermoon. Ron Damien had already been connected with the Beast Bloods. So Jules assumed that Ronnie's employer must have belonged to the cultist organization. Cultists would seldom let rankers handle their business affairs. That meant Ronnie was also a Beast Blood. Probably lower in rank than the person who had allowed him to conduct the underground auctions. Then the auction Ron had organized must have been his clearing stockpile event that needed to be done before he went off the grid for a while. In Julie's mind, it all made sense. Aaron too had remembered why Julie was melancholic about the bullshittery he was spewing to make her sleep with him. When she hinted to him in the message she had left for him that she was a cultist, her talk of that night made sense for him too. Aaron wanted to come in contact with a genuine cultist organization after reading through Edgar's journal. He wanted even more research than the cultists had on anthropo and demi-humans to understand what he was. Ron Damien's cultist background as a member of Beast Bloods had already been presumed by Julie as a cultist as well. Now that the Beast Bloods branch near the city of Silvermoon was destroyed completely, he could claim that he was part of the organization too and nobody would be there to refute him. Plus, the name Ron Damien must have achieved a celebratory status within the cultists by now. His adventures or rather misadventures with the Scion of Slughorn had become public knowledge. So it was easy for them to accept him as one of them. The best part of the whole thing was that Ron Damien was a masked entity for the rankers. His facial identity was still not known. Therefore, no rankers organization would be able to tie him up because he used his alias a few more times. So Aaron took his risk and decided to let Ronnie take the wheels on this one. He wanted to see what Jules was offering him. Ronnie smiled before pulling a chair in front of the cultist in the shadows assistant professor of LA. The latter had chosen the same table at which Ronnie had impressed her with his cheesy pickup lines. You are right, I'm one of them. Just like you. I wanted to lay low for a few months at this time after things blew out of proportion than I had anticipated. But your message has forced me to meet you. Now tell me, why did you contact me all of a sudden? Ron asked while pouring himself a drink from the wine bottle that he just ordered as soon as he got to the place. Then he filled the lady's glass as well before fixating his gaze on her. I just knew you were like me when you left. It's been a few years since I opened myself to a person without worrying about the consequences. So when I heard you pour your heart out in front of me, I had guessed that you must have also carried another identity. An identity that you couldn't have made known to the public. Just like me. I heard about the Slughorn scandal and figured out your identity. I also know that the things you sold at the auction event conducted at the city of Nilami contained items that could only be found at a certain place. Aaron aka Ronnie retrieved the F-rank sound barrier item from his storage and activated it. Then he raised his glass before gulping a sip from his wine glass. The butcher flashed a smile at Jules before saying, "That's right. I am one of the Beast Bloods. My branch members have all been killed. I survived because I wasn't at the place. See. I have come clean in confirming all that you seem to have figured out on your own. Now can we get back to the offer you were talking about?" Jules smiled at Aaron after she saw that Ronnie was still nonchalant about the whole incident. He was going to hide in the shadows, but something told her he wasn't as concerned about his safety as he should have been. "Yes, Ronnie. It seems you are in a hurry, so I won't beat around the bush. Why don't you work for my organization now that you seem to have broken ties with the Beast Bloods? I mean, you would have been safely sent to one of the Beast Bloods' hideouts if you were still being accepted by them, am I wrong?" Julie asked while lifting her wine glass and airing the wine inside it in suave. Aaron didn't look panicked and replied just as easily. "Correct again as well. The Beast Bloods don't want me because they have completely given up on the branch at the city of Silvermoon. They don't want to invite trouble by still being associated with me. Who can blame them, right? Haha." Aaron highlighted with his speech that at the end of the day every cultist was on his own. The concept was true for rankers as well. But with cultists, it had been taken to the extreme. Yeah. Cultists cut down on the deadweights after all. But I know someone with potential when I see one. You shouldn't have joined the Beast Bloods in the first place, Ronnie. They are all mad lads. What I'm offering you to be a part of is considered as one of the elitist groups of cultists. Should you choose to accept my offer, I will assure you that you won't be mistreated in my organization the way you were by your anthrope friends. Aaron raised his eyebrows before asking the question he was guessing the answer of. Elitist cultivation organization, you say? Might I ask what organization you represent? Jules smiled a cunning smile before saying the net words in a hushed voice even when she knew the sound artifact was active. We call ourselves, the Illuminati. Chapter 233, Theranthrope Transformation Mimicry 01. Julie confessed and looked at Ronnie's reaction. As she had expected, his eyes had been opened wide in surprise as soon as she said the organization's name she was part of. Ronnie aka Aaron was surprised. But it was for a different reason. This was because he knew that some years from now two of the cultists' organizations would wage war against each other. Nothing much was public knowledge about the war between two cultist groups. But Aaron knew one of them had its name revealed to the public as the Illuminati. The Illuminati later had another conflict with another cultist organization, but it soon found the allies it needed to keep on engaging with its enemies. But it was never revealed to the normal populace what the organizations were fighting about. The Illuminati had been in the limelight for some time during Aaron's previous timeline. But he had been too busy making ends meet to care about kingdom-level affairs. And now the same Illuminati had its members approach him. Aaron guessed that whatever the reason for that conflict was, it was connected to why Julie had approached him. Because the timing of this whole thing made it appear to be the case in the butcher's head. "Do you know about us?" Julie had a look of interest when she asked Ronnie. The latter nodded before replying. "Only a few details. You guys like to infiltrate the establishments and remodel them from within to suit your needs. Why are you guys looking for me?" Julie flashed a smile before affirming what Aaron was saying. "That's right. Unlike Beast Bloods or most of the cultist organizations that are filled with degenerates and criminals, Illuminati only takes those people who have a relatively successful career in their field. The reason is simple. We want to reshape the establishment's beliefs from within. Anyone can cause mass direction if you think about it. Where's the talent in that? Real talent is when you destroy the things you want to destroy and replace them with something better without making a noise. Beast Bloods had never allowed you to grow. But with my organization's backing, I can assure you that you'd get more than you ever could be retaining your current affiliation. So what do you think? Do you want to come with us?" Julie asked with a subtle temptation in her voice. Aaron didn't reply immediately. He seemed to be thinking about something as he gulped the contents inside his wine glass some more before finally commenting. "I know that the cultists' organizations work on one fundamental principle, no matter how radical or mild they are. Equivalent exchanges and equivalent benefits. If I have so many benefits just being part of your organization, surely there must be something in it for you too in recruiting me. Tell me what that is up front. I always appreciate straight shooters. Julie hadn't doubted Ronnie's intelligence. But keeping a sane mind in the face of benefits highlighted that part of the former's personality she had come to admire. You are right. But before I tell you that, I need to confirm something about you. Aaron raised his eyebrows but he didn't say anything. His silence was enough for Jules to continue. I need to see if you can go through the therianthrope transformation before I tell you the reason for me inviting you to my organization. After that, I'll ask you about some not so well-known details about Beast Bloods to confirm your association with Beast Bloods. Just to confirm your identity as a member of Beast Bloods. Finally, I'll have you sign a non-disclosure contract. Are you willing? Julie had stoic expressions when she said that. Aaron didn't take long as he finished his wine before replying. I am. A few days before the meeting with Julie took place, Aaron was talking with Agatha about a few details he had found in Edgar's journal. So do you not feel any voracious hunger from time to time? Or to be more specific, what has changed for you since you've gone through the therianthropic transformation? Agatha was confused and irritated. Because just a few moments before, Aaron was discussing business stuff with her. Now he had shifted to asking about Beast Bloods and her transformation again. She wasn't used to sudden shifts of gears. But she forced herself to calm down before replying. Not really. I feel that my trigger for anger and survival instinct has been altered from normal rankers. But I always had those emotions enhanced in the first place. So I can't say for sure. Why are you asking? Aaron pondered to himself after hearing his slave's response. So nothing changes for anthropes and people using beast contract spells. Or the changes aren't noticeable enough for the rankers on an individual level as they are for me. But it would be wrong for me to assume things based on Agatha's words alone. I need to see her in action. Thinking this, Aaron commanded Agatha to perform her therianthropic transformation in front of him. The latter just sighed after witnessing her master's erratic whims before obliging. Agatha started transforming. Her height grew a little. The muscles on her limbs became more prominent. Plus, she started having a distinct fur growth on those limbs. Her eyes also changed from those of normal humans to those that had vertical pupils. Agatha was a cute young girl. She was a bit shorter than Aaron. But her transformation had pushed her height by 4 to 5 inches, allowing her to surpass Aaron's normal stature. Her white hair and light green eyes were still the same after her transformation. But now they had the air of beastly aura around them. But the biggest change Agatha had after entering her transformed state wasn't physical. Her mana signature now had the subtle aura of a mana beast mixed in it. Any normal ranker would be able to sense the deviation in mana signature because the transformation had caused the mana signature to spread forth in the vicinity. Meaning a normal anthrope of Agatha's level couldn't mask the signature once they entered their transformed state. That or Agatha just wasn't skilled enough yet to do it. Chapter 234, Therianthrope Transformation Mimicry 02. Any normal ranker would be able to sense the deviation in mana signature because the transformation had caused the mana signature to spread around in the vicinity. Meaning an anthrope of Agatha's level cannot conceal their signature once they enter their transformed state. Aaron got closer to Agatha while she was in her transformed state. He started looking at her transformed body keenly, which put her in an awkward state. But she stood still to let her master continue what he was doing. Aaron started touching her skin and poking his fingers at her muscles. He was also using his mana sense to scan her entire body. Agatha started blushing because the butcher had already crossed the personal boundaries with this very act of his. That too with a straight face on. Reen, what do you think? Aaron asked his beast companion. All his senses were shared with her, so she was observing the anthrope girl with him. Her skeletal structure had changed along with her musculature. But they are on a superficial level. But her mana signature has changed drastically. And yet, one can conclude that she is a human. Aaron kept on analyzing Agatha's body while caressing his chin. He thought of something and asked the C-rank demon beast his next query. Reen, you have seen Ivor perform his transformation. What would be the difference between the transformations obtained through beast contract spell and therianthropy? Aaron could deduce the differences himself, but he wanted Reen's opinion since she could analyze these things on a deeper level than him because of her ranking status. Visually speaking, the two methods of transformation won't seem that different from each other. But the beast contract spell only focuses on changing the musculature of the ranker. Whereas, therianthropic transformation goes beyond just musculature alteration and changes the ranker's skeletal structure, only if temporary. This slave of yours has tried her finest to play it cool in front of you. But I can assure you that the process must be painful. Unlike the beast contract spell, the therianthropic transformation causes a ranker to feel pain. But in return, they get a much larger boost in body state value than the beast contract spell users could ever hope for. Her five senses and her mana sense also seem keener than they would be if suppose she had executed only the beast contract spell. We have already discussed the deviation of the mana signature. Compared to the beast contract spell, the therianthropic transformation would make the ranker's mana signature deviate drastically. Apart from these changes, I don't see anything to be different. Reen concluded her analysis and waited for her master to register his thoughts. Will we be able to copy the therianthropic transformation the way we did with the beast contract spell? Aaron asked what he was thinking finally. He was almost sure that he would be able to copy the therianthropic transformation with Reen's help. But he asked just to be sure. Well, yeah. Your bones and your muscles have become pretty malleable ever since your transformation. You'd not suffer during your therianthropic transformation mimicry at all. The cosmetic effects are easy to copy and produce. What you need to worry about is the deviation in the mana signature. It won't be the same as the beast contract spell. So alone, your bluff will be found out. Hee. But you are never alone. With my help, the deviation in mana signature is no biggie. I just need to sync the tiny bit of my mana signature with yours. And the very attribute of my mana signature would cause the biggest deviation in yours. Aaron heard this and smiled. Let's do a demo of my therianthropic transformation shortly in front of this lass. I want to get her opinion. Aaron commanded Reen to help him go through an anthrope-like transformation. The latter didn't have any problem with it. So she obliged. Aaron used the purple lightning beast as the base of therianthropic transformation. Therefore instead of fur, his transformation started producing distinct scales over his skin. And just like the real one, his stature increased and his height even crossed Agatha's enhanced height by 2 inches. Aaron's mana signature also deviated distinctly as his mana signature spread forth. One had to say that Reen had done her job fabulously. She had taken note of every little thing and made sure that all of them are implemented in Aaron's therianthropic transformation mimicry. Agatha was left dumbfounded after she saw Aaron go through his transformation. At first, she had thought that Aaron was executing the beast contract spell she knew him to be using. But her expressions and her thoughts changed as the latter had his transformation with her. Aaron, how can you perform anthrope transformation? Did you take on the path of therianthropy? Why would I take the path that is but a mere imitation? Thought Aaron to himself before leaving his slave to draw her conclusions. He wasn't obliged to answer her queries after all. But his transformation had positively confirmed something for him. It meant that he could act as a genuine therianthrope as well. This was another card he wanted to have in his deck. The butcher would have never thought the card he had prepared in advance was going to get used so soon. After hearing Julie's demand to show him his therianthropic transformation, he was glad that he had come prepared. It had given him the confidence to play Julie's sudden curveball. I can indeed show you my therianthropic transformation. But do you think this is the time and place to do that? Aaron asked Jules with his signature smirk. His intentions couldn't have been any clearer. Hee. That night wasn't enough for me either, Ronnie. Who says business and pleasure can't get along? Grand Hyatt is under some heat right now. So it might not be a good idea to go there. But I know just the place. You just need to follow me. Let's go. Show me the beast that's inside you. Part 8 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.